Everybody, good evening. I think it's just a little after 6:30, so we will make a start. We've got a very busy evening ahead of us. First of all, welcome to everybody, members of the committee, members in the audience, lots of people here tonight, which is very nice to see. Welcome also to anyone watching on the Council's YouTube channel. We've got a busy agenda tonight. I'll start with apologies for absence. I have apologies from Councillor Walsh, who is being substituted by Councillor Hooks, and I think, Councillor Hooks, that's going to be the case for the next few meetings, isn't it? Yep, that's fine. Councillor Coleridge is
yes, thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Coleridge is running a little bit late. He hopes to be here certainly well in advance of 7 o'clock. Following advice, he will arrive, sit in the public gallery if there's an item already in flow, and then wait for your invitation to come to the table. Thank you.
That's fine. Thank you very much. I know that there are traffic problems all around the place this evening. Right. Declarations of interest to declare the existence and nature of any disclosable pecuniary interest or other registrable interest relating to items on the agenda, having regard to the Code of Conduct, and taken appropriate advice where necessary. I will just to start with do a joint declaration on behalf of all of us for any speakers this evening who are also district councillors. Right, do I have any others? Lots of you. Right. Councillor Monday, I'll start with you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Chairman of House and Town Council, but I'm not involved in any of the planning decisions. In fact, Councillor Finkin and I walk out the room for that particular item on the agenda, so I will stay and vote.
Fine, thank you. Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm a member of Witham Town Council, and last council year, I was a member of the planning subcommittee. And there are references made on the agenda to the north of Witham. So I will declare a non-pecuniary interest for those and leave the room if they are mentioned.
Okay, right. Thank you, Councillor Martin. Councillor Finken, did you have your hand
I have the
up?
same declaration as Councillor Mundy. I'm a member of House and Town Council,
Okay.
but I leave the room when any planning decisions are made.
Okay, fine. Councillor Hooks.
Yeah, I have an other registrable interest in Rain, as I'm Chair of the Parish Council, but I have not been involved in any of the decision making regarding planning items and have taken advice on my situation for tonight, so I will remain in the room. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Abbott, I can't remember, did you have your hand up? No. Councillor Parker.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I'd like to make a declaration of a non-registrable interest in relation to items GRYE 2175 and 2176, the two sites in Great Yeldum. The applicant is known to me via a family member, but is not a close associate or friend of mine, and having taken advice, I will remain and vote. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Butland.
Thank you, Chairman. I have a non-registrable interest in item number 5. I know one of the speakers, Councillor Philip Rawlinson, but I've not had any discussions with him about any of the applications. I intend to stay and vote. Similarly, a non-registrable interest in the same item, in that I know Speaker Councillor Jan Willis, who is a member of Rain Parish Council, which I attend in my role as a county councillor, but I have not had any discussions with her about the site, and I intend to stay and vote. And finally, on the same on item 7, where I know both speakers, John Pearce and Councillor Roger Duffin. In that case, I have met both of them as part of the neighbourhood group that have been looking at the neighbourhood plan for that area, but I've always met them in the presence of officers, and I intend to stay and vote.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. Councillor Cunningham.
Thank you very much indeed. I'd like to declare similar interest to Councillor Butland and knowing Councillor Rawlinson, and knowing Mr Duffin and Mr Pearce. I would also like to declare that I have been indicated public support for the work of the Finchingfield and Wethersfield Joint Neighbourhood Plan, but also particularly the working group surrounding the future usage of the former RAF Wethersfield site. Therefore, it would only be appropriate that I remove myself from that debate this evening. On another matter, I have received representations relating to issues being considered in the village of Rain. I have not indicated a predetermined position on that, so therefore, Madam Chairman, I will stay and contribute to that debate and vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Councillor Parker?
Sorry, Madam Chairman, I forgot to mention actually also Councillor Rawlinson, Mr Duffin, Councillor Duffin are also known to me. I haven't discussed these items with him. Also Councillor Gentry, again, similarly, I have not discussed items with him. Thank you.
Thank you. Have I missed Councillor Ritchie?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Similar to some other colleagues of knowing Councillor Rawlinson, I have not discussed anything on the agenda this evening, so I shall stay and vote. Thank you.
Thank you. No other declarations of interest? Right, good. Item 3, minutes of previous meeting. We have 2 lots of minutes from the 24th of July and the 31st of July. Does anybody have any comments or amendments on either of those? If not, could I have a mover? Thank you. And a seconder? Thank you. Quick show of hands if everybody is in agreement. Thank you very much. Just sign that. Thanks, Alison. Right, I'll move on to item 4, public question time. I've just got a few things to say about this. So the way I'm going to work it this evening is I'm going to call people forward. We have quite a lot of speakers tonight. I'm going to call people forward immediately before the item that they are interested in, rather than calling everybody forward one after the other now. So that's how I'm intending to do that this evening. I just wanted to say something about the deadline for registering to speak. So we do have a timeline on this, which is by midday, 2 working days before the meeting. So for tonight, for example, the deadline to register to speak was noon on Monday, and it will be the same next week, because we're meeting Wednesday of next week. The meeting after that, when we're also looking at large strategic sites, is on Monday the 6th of October. So the deadline to register for that will be by midday on the preceding Thursday. I did have some late requests to speak this time. There were a couple of people who came forward on the Monday afternoon, and I actually had 1 or 2 requests yesterday. I have let them go through, that's fine. But if people could make every effort to try and make the deadline, it would be helpful. Governance, somebody from the governance team, and I'm very grateful to Alison and Corinne from the team for managing this particular session, have to collate names, contact details, send a list to me, and once I've given it the green light, then go back to all those people, tell them they've got a spot to speak, ask them to submit their statements. Those statements then have to be collated and emailed round to the committee before the meeting, so everybody has a chance to read them. Now, if you've only got 3 or 4 people registering to speak, that's not such a big deal, really. We've got 14 tonight, so it has involved, you know, a little bit more work for everybody. So it would be appreciated if people could, you know, try and register on time. Hope that's okay. I don't want to be undemocratic and stop anybody coming to speak, but it just helps with the management of the meetings if you can make the deadline. This evening, with the first agenda item, which are the 26 sites which we are reviewing, I'm going to take voting separately on each of those because we are reviewing them. Officers' recommendations on some of them are a bit different to when we looked at them earlier in the year, and committees' views may be different. So I think for transparency, once officers have given the presentation on each of those, I will ask for, obviously, any comments, and then somebody to move second and a quick show of hands. So we're going to do it that way, okay? And just finally, a reminder from me of why we need to allocate enough sites. I know I've said this before, but I think it bears repeating. Things have changed since our last local plan process. We know we have a local plan in place and adopted at the moment, but it's important that we keep it that way. things have changed. We've had a change of government and we've had an increased housing target given to us. It's really important that we make that target. And I mean this sincerely, there is very little point in this authority presenting a draft local plan to the inspectorate next year, which clearly is short of that target. It will barely make it through their front door, figuratively speaking. So we do need to make best efforts to try and allocate enough sites and enough housing. Without a sound local plan in place, we are at risk of speculative developments coming forward. And if the worst comes to it, the government actually stepping in and taking over our planning decisions for us. They've done that with other authorities, and they've been very clear they expect everybody to make their targets and to have a sound local plan in place. So it is really important that we do that. We are reviewing 26 small sites this evening. That was agreed, discussed and agreed at the end of the last meeting we had on 31st of July. It wasn't an agenda item because it came about as a discussion at the end of the meeting. But a number of members of the committee felt that more sites could possibly be allocated to the north of the district. There were some sites where parish councils had either expressed support or had not actually objected, which we felt we could look at again. And officers also felt there were some sites where if we reduced the housing numbers, maybe they might be more acceptable. That's why we are reviewing those sites tonight. But I would stress this is still very early stage in the local plan process. It's a draft process. There are 2 consultations to go yet. One will be towards the end of this year, another one next year, before we send it to the inspectorate. There is plenty of time for people to put their comments in, and I would encourage people to use the consultation process to say, you know, what they think about the various sites. So nothing is set in stone, nothing is a done deal. It's very early on, but we do need to get started on this, and we do need to at least get some sites in the draft allocations. All right, I hope that's all okay with everybody. And having said all of that, I think we can now move on to item 5, which is Braintree District Local Plan Review, further small site allocations. And Alan, I think you're taking this, aren't you?
Yes, I am.
Right,
Thank you very much,
okay.
Councillor Spray. Members, as Councillor Spray just set out, we have been looking at some additional small sites. Following the previous round of meetings, we found we have a shortfall of approximately 250 homes within the short-term period of the current of the draft local plan. The report has identified some previously considered sites, which we think we can reconsider. So we've identified potential sites for about 417 dwellings. These range from small development boundary amendments to larger allocations of about 100 to 125 dwellings. And we've also included some additional self-build type proposals. The sites which are for less than 10 can't be added to the housing trajectories. They're not specifically allocated in the plan. However, once they obtain planning permission, then they will be included in the housing trajectory as and when it is updated. So we'll be looking at the first area, which is Ashen. I don't believe we have any speakers on Ashen, do we? No, we don't.
No, we haven't, no.
So the first, there's these 2 sites in, well, it looks like multiple sites, it's actually the same site. Ashi 2009, originally put forward for 35 dwellings. Officers have reviewed it. We still don't consider the site is suitable due to its open character of the area, and we've set out some further reasoning in paragraph 3.3 of the report to not recommend that site.
Okay. Anybody have any comments on that one? If not, could I have somebody to move that that site is not allocated? Councillor Cunningham and seconded Councillor Parker. Quick show of hands if you're in agreement with that, please. Thank you very much, members. Okay. Right, thank you, Alan.
Madam Chairman.
Yes.
Sorry, could we have an indication from the officers on each one what the parish council view is? Because one of the criteria we set down was is the parish council against,
yes,
neutral or in favour?
Yep, okay, that's fair
Yeah.
enough comment. Sorry, does that
We can
cause
do that,
you any
yes. I'd have-
problems, Alan? Yeah, that's fine.
Bear with me one moment.
And it wasn't the only reason that we are
No.
reviewing these, but it was certainly a
Yes,
strong
it was a-
consideration. Yeah.
Yes. So I don't have the information in front of me this time as to whether it was a parish council proposal. We were provided with a list of sites, by members, as some members wrote into us as per the request. Yes, so I don't have the information to hand. So I would have to
Okay.
look that one up if
I think
possible for
on
me.
some of these
Yeah.
this evening, I think we probably do have that an indication in the report, but
Yeah,
maybe not
not
on
all
all
of
of them.
them.
Sorry, Councillor Abbott, but
Apologies for
that one is not being allocated, judging by the show of hands I've just had. Okay, we'll do our best.
Mhm.
Okay. All right, thanks, Alan. Recommendation 2. We have no speakers on this one.
Okay. The next one, BOCN 2038. This site is less than 10, however, it's already within the development boundary. There has been some planning history on it, but it could come forward in future. But there's been issues with the access. But if there were to be able to resolve that, then we could allocate that in future, and that's set out in paragraph 3.6.
Right, members, any comment? Councillor Munday. All right, thank you. Does that find a seconder? Councillor Cunningham first. Show of hands, please. That's not allocated. Thank you. Right, recommendation 3. Now, I have speakers on the... no, I don't have
No, yes,
speakers on the Bulmer items. Right, sorry, carry on.
Okay. So the next site is Bulmer. So there are two sites, Bulmer 2056, which is a brownfield site proposed for 8 dwellings. It is away from the existing development in the village, so it's not been proposed to allocate it as per para 3.9. And do you want to go into the second one while we're here?
Yes, please.
Yeah, and the second site, Bulmer 2059, this was also proposed for 8 dwellings, but it has quite a significant history of planning refusal, particularly on landscaping grounds. And there's been no changes in circumstances since that refusal, so it's not recommended to allocate that one either.
Okay.
So 3.2.
Do you want to do the next one?
One more in Bulmer is, this is 2059, so this is actually adjacent to Ballingdon, near
2062.
Apologies,
2062.
2062. Apologies, a typo there. So this site is adjacent to Ballingdon. So bear with me 1 second. So it's near Sudbury. It's on the border. It's had an appeal dismissed back in 2023. So that one's not been proposed for allocations for reasons set out para 315.
Right, members, any comment on any of those? Right, could I have a mover, please? Councillor Butland, Councillor Parker seconding, and a show of hands, please. Thank you. Right, now I do have speakers, so we're on to recommendation 6 and 7, both of which are for Buers. So the first speaker I have on this is Mr. James Firth from Mount Buers. Mr. Firth, would you like to come forward? You have 3 minutes, and I just should have said everybody has 3 minutes, and we're going to be pretty strict on that tonight, I'm afraid, because we've got quite a lot of you. Thank you.
Thank you for hearing me speak. As you will of course be aware, rural affordable housing exception sites, as the name suggests, are exceptions to normal policy. There is no requirement to amend a development boundary or to allocate land in order to bring forward such a scheme. The proposal for Mount Buer is to extend the development boundary around what is an empty field in a sensitive landscape is therefore completely inappropriate and would risk establishing the principle for all manner of types of inappropriate development. There is no support from Mount Buer's Parish Council, and the minutes I have reviewed from Buer's Hamlet Parish made it clear that Mount Buer's Parish Council support was considered vital. There's been no direct engagement with Mount Buer's residents as part of the emerging Buer's Neighbourhood Plan, which remains at draft stage and cannot be given weight. And regardless, Buer's Hamlet and Buer's St Mary needs should be met in or adjoining those settlements, as these are the places where needs surveys were carried out, not in the separate, much smaller settlement of Mount Buer's. Officers' clear advice in this committee's decision in June was this site was unsustainable. It remains completely isolated from the main Buer's village. There is no shop, no school, no railway station, no footways, no street lighting, and no safe path links. With regards to landscape, there is a public right-of-way across this site, including an important public view across the path looking at the Stour Valley, an area being considered as part of the potential AONB extension. Braintree Council successfully won an appeal at a public inquiry on landscape grounds on a site only 300 metres away from this one. The inspector stated, "The landscape around Buer's is not ordinary countryside of no value, but is of high sensitivity and is locally valued. There is a listed building which adjoins the site to the northwest, and its setting would clearly be impacted. Achievable access has also not been shown, and given the need to link into the road, this would appear to require a cross-border application into Colchester and a new access very close to a level crossing with only half barriers, which raises safety concerns. This remains a completely inappropriate site for a change to the development boundary. Nothing has changed since June other than you now having additional information on the constraints of the site. I would urge this is an unsustainable site in a sensitive landscape, and that a change to the development boundary here should not be supported." Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Firth. Next speaker I have on these items is Councillor Ian Woodman from Mount Buer's Parish Council. Good evening.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the opportunity to make this statement. Mount Buer's Parish Council considered it was important to do so, as we are the community most directly affected by this proposal, and it seemed to us that there were some unevidenced and misleading statements being made about the site in the latest advice from planning officers. To provide some context, Mount Buer's is a small rural parish with a population of just 220 people in scattered settlements. The largest of some 30 houses is that near the level crossing. It has no shops and a very restricted bus service. The services in Buer's over a mile away are only accessible by car, by walking along busy country roads, or by long walks on muddy footpaths. It's not identified in the developing Colchester City Plan as an area for sustainable development. The settlement is recognised as being distinctively separate from Buer's Hamlet. The proposed site lies in a prominent position within a highly sensitive landscape which forms part of the Stour Valley project. It offers wide public views towards Buer's village and is highly visible from the higher slopes around Buer's. The site has been a subject of several speculative planning applications or proposals over the years. All have been rejected on the grounds that the development would be detrimental to the rural landscape and harmful to the open countryside. The June meeting of this committee confirmed this position, planning officers then saying that it was not suitable for allocation due to environmental sensitivity and poor connectivity. None of this has changed since June. The site remains in a sensitive area with very poor connectivity. There is no explanation given in the latest planning officer's report justifying any change in assessment. Imposing a planning development boundary around this would allow any planning application to come forward and is completely without justification and would be in conflict with both local and national policies. The current advice from planning officers also suggests, without evidence, that there is some support for the development of the site in Mount Buer's. I don't know where this assessment came from, as the views of the parish council were not sought. A petition organised in 2016 on a suggested development of the site showed 46 households opposed, with 7 identified in support. The parish council considers that this is likely still to reflect the balance of opinion in the parish. To reiterate, Mount Buer's Parish Council can see no justification for this sudden proposal to place a development boundary around this site, in complete conflict with the planning officer's previous advice, and does not support it. The Council also believes that any rural affordable housing exception schemes that might come forward should be made through the plan in application in the usual manner. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Woodman. Thank you. I now have on this item Councillor David Holland, District Councillor.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members, I'm here this evening to speak in support of both of the proposed sites in Buer's Hamlet, in the Stour Valley ward which I represent, and in support of the express position on these sites of Buer's Hamlet Parish Council. Both of these sites can deliver to the development objectives set out within the emerging Buer's Joint Neighbourhood Plan. Affordable homes are much needed in this settlement, as was established through general public consultation during the development of the Buer's Joint Neighbourhood Plan, and also in a number of emails and letters which I have in my possession. Gentrification of the rural villages has put market housing beyond the reach of locals. The proposed site, identified as BURE 2070, land at Old Barn Road, Mount Buers, would provide the affordable housing that local residents request, seek and need. The location is rural, but part of the need identified by residents in the letters comes from the rural workers employed on local farms, where commuting is incommensurate with their sometimes very long working hours and very early starts. The second and larger site, identified as Buer 2071, Woolpit Downs, Parsonage Hill, has garnered no objection from Buer's Hamlet Parish Council, and again brings further potential for the delivery of affordable housing that would contribute towards the circa 40 units that are needed to fulfil the need and target identified in the emerging joint Buer's local plan, neighbourhood plan. Market housing, which would be in keeping with the neighbourhood plan targets, would help increase the viability of local community facilities and make Buer's a more thriving and vibrant rural settlement. The officer's report focuses almost exclusively with respect to this site on speculation around potential access issues, but these may well be resolved through mitigation. Given that this issue would have to be resolved by any developer seeking planning consent and agreed by the Highways Authority over access before any development consent could be given, I believe the site should be allocated such that this can be tested and hopefully resolved through the normal planning process. To conclude, I believe that both of these sites will deliver much needed affordable housing in the early years of the refreshed local plan, particularly so the Mount Buer site. Accordingly, I believe it is in Buer's overall best interest that the Old Barn Road site is provided with a development boundary and that Parsonage Hill site is allocated for development within the refreshed local plan. Thank you, Madam Chair and members.
Thank you very much, Councillor Holland. Thank you. That's the end of speakers on that item. So, Alan, over to you.
Thank you very much. If we go to, so right, thank you. So the first site, Buer 2070, is adjacent to Mount Buer's, which is, so Mount Buer's is obviously outside of the district. The proposed site is within Braintree district. It's been put forward for 8 dwellings proposed for affordable housing. There has been support from Buer's Parish Council, who consider that the site will meet the need for housing identified in the draft neighbourhood plan. That neighbourhood plan, I believe, is due to be submitted shortly. I'm quite happy to withdraw the point about support from Mount Buer's Parish Council. Yes, I think I have sort of mentioned, or will mention now that Mount Buer's have objected to this proposal. We'd also like to highlight the potential heritage impact that would need to be assessed, as there are some listed buildings on the other side of the border that officers were not aware of at the time of the assessment. So the recommendation is to identify a development boundary to enable the site to come forward for affordable housing. I mean, it could potentially come forward through another route, such as a rural exception site policy as well, and that would be subject to the usual to the local plan policy. And we would obviously need to have discussions with Colchester as to how any application of that site will be dealt with, as it would be a cross-boundary application. So do you want to take this one first, Councillor Sprague?
Yeah, I will. Thanks. So your recommendation stands at
currently.
Currently, yes.
It currently stands. I do draw the point about Mount Buer supporting it.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Right, members. Anybody have any comment? Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I remember this site well when it came to at the last committee when we considered it, and I think there was a presentation from the developer who was explaining his idea for some affordable housing there. I've taken the points that the speakers have made, and I do agree that this is generally not a sustainable location. It certainly isn't a sustainable location, and it is also in a sensitive landscape area, which I think probably were points made by officers previously. We do have a route, as has been outlined by officers, for the site to come forward as a rural exception site, and I think that is the correct. In fact, actually, you can see how very exposed it is. I think that is the correct route for this application to come forward as a planning application through the rural exception site, should the developer wish to do that.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, Councillor Finken.
Yes, I agree with Councillor Parker. I think that the arguments put forward by representatives of the parish council are more convincing than the arguments put on the other side. And I don't think it's a suitable location. I wasn't quite sure because it says 17 dwellings and the officer mentioned 8 dwellings. Which is it?
Yeah, it's 8. It's proposed for 8.
Right, because it definitely says 17 dwellings at the top of the... 3.17.
If I may clarify that. So the figure at the top was the original figure submitted for the site. It was the original figure as assessed in the Strategic Housing Land Availability Assessment, and that just shows a unconstrained capacity on the site. However, the proposal is put forward was for 8, not 17, but that's to show members the potential capacity on that site.
Well, in view of the fact that it can come forward through other means at a later stage, I would maintain that we shouldn't be putting it in the local plan at this stage.
Right, thank you. Councillor Bowes-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just for clarification and to assist the members of the public in the gallery and those watching, should we not be reminding everyone that even if we approve a site tonight, it still has to apply for planning permission and get that planning permission?
Yes, thank you, Councillor. I probably should have mentioned that in my preamble. And that applies whether we are looking at a site for 5, 8 or 800 homes. They still, even if they are allocated in the local plan and that is accepted by the inspectorate, they will still have to come down the planning application route. Yeah, thank you for that. Right, no any comments. So would somebody like to move something that this is allocated or not? Councillor Parker.
I would move that it's not allocated.
Does that find a seconder, Councillor Finken? Right, can I have a show of hands on that, please, that site is not allocated at this stage? 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, those against that motion? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Right, so that falls. So could I have somebody to indicate that it is allocated, please?
I'll move that one.
Right, and a seconder, Councillor Martin, and a show of hands on that one, please. Right, thank you. Those against? Any abstentions? 1 abstention. Right, so that site is to be allocated at this draft stage. Right, thank you, members. Right, Alan, next one is 2062. 2071.
Yes, so this is the site adjacent to Buer's hamlet. It's estimated it could get up to 43 dwellings on this site. We don't primarily, our officers' concern is the access. The road to the south is quite well treed and hedged with a well-established hedgerow, and it's also quite close to this bend on the corner. As you can see, it's also not possible or feasible to get an access from the north side of the site. Whilst it does attach to a lane, it is a single track unmetalled lane. It leads to our gypsy site towards the end of the towards the west there. So officers aren't recommending a change to the recommendation at this time.
Thank you, Alan. All right, so members, so the recommendation is not for allocation. Does anybody have move? Councillor Finken, second, or does anybody have any other comments? Councillor Parker?
Just a second.
To second it, right. So it's a mover and a seconder to not allocate 2071. Can I have a show of hands, please? Okay, anyone against? Abstentions? Right, thank you. Right, that has been moved and recommended not for allocation. Okay, fine, thank you. Recommendation 8, which is Castle Hedingham.
Okay. So this site, Castle Hedingham, cash 2078, has been put forward for 9 dwellings. As members can see on the map, it's separated from the main development area at Castle Hedingham by a green buffer, so wouldn't be a natural extension to development in that location, and it is not proposed for allocation at this time, as per para 2.24. Thank you.
Comments? Councillor Abbott, moving that. A seconder, please. This is not Councillor Bowes-Flint. And a show of hands, please. Thank you. I think that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay. Number 9.
Next site, same site with a larger extent. This site has been put forward, so it's cash 2079. We could potentially accommodate up to 54 dwellings. Again, as per 2078, it's not recommended for allocation as it's away from the Castle Hedingham and separated by a green buffer. Thank you.
Okay. Any comments? No? Would anybody like to move that? Councillor Abbott. And seconder, please. Councillor Monday. And a show of hands. Thank you, members. Right, number 10.
Yeah, next site. This is Cressing. This is Crest 2107. It was proposed for 133 dwellings. Officers don't consider it to be a natural extension to either Tay Green or the apple tree farm area. As such, we are not proposing to allocate the site as for the reasons set out in para 330.
Right. Right, thank you. I've had that moved and seconded. Show of hands, please. Thank you, members. Good. Right, recommendation 11, land at Woodpeckers, Earls Colne.
Yeah, so this is Earl 2120, land at Woodpeckers. It's proposed for about 40 dwellings. This is a lower capacity than was previously reported. Also, it would require only require the demolition of 1 existing property rather than 2, as previously stated. The property that would require demolition is in possession of the site promoter. However, it would still be considered to be inappropriate backland development and is not recommended as per the reasons set out para 3.33 of the report.
And do you want to move on to the next one as well, 2126, and then I can take any comments after that?
2126. So this site is land north of Station Road, Earls Colne, proposed for 70 dwellings. The site has had a previous refusal and an appeal won, primarily on landscape grounds, and there hasn't been any change in circumstances since that appeal. As such, we are not proposing to allocate it for the reasons set out at para 3.37.
Right, members, that's 2120 and 2126. Does anybody have any comment? You're moving that, Councillor Butland, yeah? And Councillor Cunningham seconding. Show of hands, please. Thank you. Right, okay.
Chairman, if I just may interrupt for a moment. Councillor
Yes.
Coldridge has arrived in the chamber. It would be an appropriate point that he can join the committee because you're now to move on to a fresh item and
Yes,
he will hear all relevant information to be able to participate.
That's fine, yes. Thank you very much. Yes, sorry, Councillor Corrigan, I didn't see you slipped in very quietly there. No, that's all right. I know traffic and so on has been pretty awful this evening. Good. Well, welcome to the meeting. Right. Recommendation 13, We're on to Fearing.
Yes, so this site is proposed for a allocation for 5 self-build. It's known as Little Barrows World's End Fearing, site reference 2131. Site is a relatively well-contained area of land within the setting of Fearing, and whilst it does have a limited access, a smaller development may be appropriate on the site. When it was previously submitted for consideration, it was looked at as a development for 35 dwellings, which isn't the case now, so we are looking at 5, not 35. An appeal was refused on the site, however that was primarily due to landscape impact. We now have more up-to-date information on landscape impact, which has been set out in our Landscape Settlement Fringe report, which is the next item on the agenda. The other reason for refusal was it was contrary to the development plan of the area, but obviously if we're allocating a site and it gets through the process, then that objection would fall away. So as we've had an updated landscape character assessment, it's proposed to provide an allocation for 5 self-build properties. This would still be subject to an appropriate heritage assessment, as well as a highways. The highways issue would need to be looked at as well. It is a very narrow lane, and it's we would need to see what sort of impact 5 additional dwellings would have on it, and we would need to consult County Highways on that, as we will do with every other site we've put forward so far. Thank you.
Councillor Bowles-Flint, you indicated.
Thank you, Chairman. Can Alan just remind us of the appeal? How many properties were applied for on that site at that time, please?
It was for one. It wasn't for the whole site. It was for the area to the southeast of the. Unfortunately, the laser pointer no longer appears to work on the. It does work, but it doesn't seem to work on the digital display boards, I'm afraid. Bear with me a second. So the appeal site was roughly in this location here. So the area we'll be looking at for 5 would be towards the back. Most likely access would be here. We wouldn't seek an access here, that's far too narrow. You still need to get appropriate access for things like waste vehicles, fire, emergency vehicles, that sort of thing.
Okay, all right. Any other Councillor Abbott?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I've got concerns about this one, and I did read the Parish Council's written representation. I don't think they're here tonight to speak to it, but they raised the issue of the access. One of the many places I misspent teenage years fishing was at World's End Lane. It is very, very narrow, and for that reason, I think if the access was better, I could support it, but actually I'm not going to support this one because of that access issue.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Bowles-Flint.
Sorry, just on clarification, isn't the access going to be in a different place?
The access, when we're referring to access, we're actually talking about World's End Lane itself. So that's the road to get to the site. That's where the concern is. I think I've got so it's an aerial. So that's what the current road looks like at the moment. But we would be seeking a view from Highways as to whether or not that sort of road would be capable of servicing 5 additional homes. There are some additional homes down. There are some homes down there already. Yes, I mean, we just need to see whether 5 would be an issue or not.
Madam Chairman, knowing that road like I do, and I never used to go fishing with Councillor Abbott, it is an extremely, extremely narrow road for that to happen. I would be concerned on that.
Okay. Right. Any other comments on that? Would somebody like to move something? Councillor Abbott.
I'll test the waters and move that we do not allocate.
Okay. Does that have a seconder? Councillor Finkin. Right. Can I have a show of hands that this is not allocated? It's been moved and seconded. Right. Okay. Those against? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Right. And abstentions? Right. That is carried. I think I've got that right, haven't I, Alison? That is carried, that site is not allocated. Okay. Where are we? Right. Okay. Right, recommendation 14. Land to the rear of 110 London Road, Braintree.
Right, apologies. Yes, sorry, I skipped forward one, apologies. So this site is GMB N2154. It's not an allocation, but rather it's a development boundary change. So the area in white, surrounded in red, was the original site submission. There is an area of white land on that map there. Next to it, which would also be included in the development boundary. There is a access which currently serves a small business towards the top of the row of houses at the end there. So we wouldn't be seeking a specific allocation. We aren't particularly convinced or that the site could sort of overcome noise and air quality concerns. However, it is relatively well enclosed between the development, the existing development to the north and the A120. So if they can come up with a scheme that would satisfy air quality and noise concerns through the planning process, then that would be able to count towards our housing supply once they were able to secure a planning permission. But we are not proposing to specifically allocate it, just include it within the development boundary. So it enables options to be explored.
Okay. But potentially 15 to 20 dwellings, is that right?
Yeah, that's
potentially.
Correct. Potentially.
But,
Yes, it could be lower than that.
Yes, okay, that's fine. Right. Yep. Seconded, Councillor Butt. Oh, do you have a comment? Sorry.
Well, I'm seconded. I understand the point about noise, but as someone who lives on this development, if the wind's in the right direction, you will hear the noise of the A120 in various places in this area, and you will, of course, get overflying flights from Stansted Airport. People are aware of that when they buy the premises. To many people, that is not as upsetting as a barking dog. Yeah. So, personally, I'm happy to second the proposal.
Okay, fine, thank you. Right, that's been moved and seconded. Can I have a show of hands, please? Thank you, members. That's unanimous. Jolly good. Right, now we've recommendation 15 and 16. These are Yeldum sites, and I do have speakers on this. So the first person to speak is Councillor Peter Gentry from Little Yeldum Parish Council and residents who would like to speak on the Little Yeldum sites. Good evening, thank you.
Good evening, thank you, Madam Chair, and good evening, councillors, members. Let me put my glasses on. I speak for Little Yeldum and Tilbridge, it was declared an Overton Parish Council. The reasons for rejecting this site, although it's moved from 159 dwellings down to 30, are unchanged and not affected by this reduction. Any further development in Great Yeldum is not sustainable, as the infrastructure to support existing dwellings is already over capacity. In fact, there is now more reason to reject this proposal, as changing the site access to Little Hyde Road rather than Little Yeldum Road is impractical, as it is narrow and already over capacity from the existing dwellings. Any additional vehicles, potentially 60 from 30 dwellings, will have no option but to join Leather Lane and compound the existing problems around the cottages and public house, where the road on Leather Lane narrows to a single track. The site is outside the development boundary, and developing it would remove productive farmland, which is key to our food self-sufficiency. LPP1 states development outside development boundaries will be confined to uses appropriate to the countryside. Developing this site cannot be considered appropriate to the countryside on a number of levels. The site also is in the flood zone 1, and the SFRA shows the risk of flooding from surface water. Concreting over farmland that dissipates surface water will only compound the flooding that regularly happens at Bridge Street, which is at the bottom of Leather Lane, which only will get worse with the increasing extreme weather conditions we are experiencing. Our parish council asks you to consider these points and conclude that this site is not appropriate for development. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Councillor Gentry. Next speaker on these items is Councillor Philip Rawlinson from Great Yeldum Parish Council.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I'm rapidly beginning to think this is my second home.
Yes, well, I'll join you in that.
Any additional site proposing more than 10 dwellings will have a severe impact on the physical and social infrastructure in the demand rising from a large residential development, specifically GRYE 2175, proposed 30 dwellings but 40 for all in the village, which would give us an increase of over 5% of properties. The services and facilities within the village are limited and any further development would not be favoured. The village has a limited public transport provision to key service villages and main towns within the district. The reduced bus service 89 has had a severe consequence on many residents trying to travel to or from work, school, college, attending appointments at GPs and hospitals, and has isolated residents, particularly the elderly, vulnerable and young people, from critical services, education, work and social opportunities. Inadequate road infrastructure, particularly the narrow leather lane, additional traffic from proposed site GRYE 2175 would create significant road congestion, especially because of the severe pinch point by the Three Bottles public house. Suggested site 2175 can be accessed through Little Hyde Road, where the roads are inadequate, narrow and serve many existing dwellings. Any increase in traffic on these small roads, where parking is already severely restricted, is increasing an existing problem. Proximity to existing properties and the environmental effect on them through noise, light and traffic pollutions. The impact on biodiversity and natural environment, these are things we want you to consider. More development will potentially increase runoff serving surface water, increasing the risk of flooding at Bridge Street, North Road, which regularly suffers from flooding. The capacity at St Andrew's Church of England School, parishioners who live in the village want to be able to send their children to the village school and not travel, if they have transport, to schools located in other villages. The school has a capacity of 155 pupils and currently has a complement of 139. But the spaces are restricted to the spaces are restricted to the upper age classes, I should say, not the upper classes. No GP services in the village, with residents accessing oversubscribed GP services in Castle and Sybil Hedingham, causing difficulties in getting and travelling to appointments. There is a lack of employment in the two villages, limited provision of shops, limited access to super broadband services. Thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you, Councillor Rawlinson, very much. And the next speaker I have is Councillor Richard Van Dulken, who is speaking on this and will also be referencing Toppersfield site, which we'll be looking at a little further down, but I'm not going to ask you to come back and read it all twice. So.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, so I'm addressing this subcommittee this evening in my capacity as member for Yeldum Ward, and where 4 sites have been brought back for reconsideration after they were passed over at the June meeting. So I'll deal first of all with the Toppersfield ones, which are, I think, simpler. So the village and the parish council and myself welcome the new recommendation by officers to include 2 small adjoining sites, TOP 2294 and 2295, for a potential of up to 6 houses, as I understand it, and these would be probably self-built, and in the development boundary of Toppersfield. And this would be done by extending the development boundary of Toppersfield. It's a logical infill, if you've seen the maps, and will provide a welcome support to the sustainability of this small village, which, as far as I'm aware, has had less than a handful of houses built in recent years. And indeed, these 2 sites have been recommended by officers. Turning to Great Yeldum and following the local councillors, these 2 plots, first of all, this one, the parish council and a number of residents have made clear their views in anything more than a small increase in housing in Great Yeldum would be unfortunate and unwelcome for a variety of reasons, and it will be recalled by members of the subcommittee that at a June meeting, approval was given to 2 sites already with a total capacity of 15 houses. I and many others feel that the 2 sites being brought back for consideration, the one we're looking at now and the next one, are a step too far for a relatively small village which has absorbed more than 10% increase in house numbers and population in recent years. With no additional facilities or infrastructure, and the village is already suffering from lack of local job opportunities and sustainability generally, all made worse in recent weeks by the sudden decision of the local bus operator to drastically curtail the only bus service serving Great Yeldum, at the expense of, in particular, school children and those without cars who need access to larger settlements like Steeple Headingham or Halstead for senior school, medical service, chemists and supermarkets, not to mention employment. I should point out that the larger of the 2 recommended sites, the one we're looking at here, on the eastern extremity of the village, would, it appears, need to be accessed by building traffic and afterwards through a long-established estate, as the officers have not recommended access through the off the main road, condemning residents to years of disruption and dirt for the sake of a few dozen houses, while the same building traffic would need to negotiate Leather Lane, which for much of the time is reduced along much of its length, as you've heard, to one very narrow lane, which would be a recipe for additional unwanted disruption. Accordingly, and thank you, Chairman, for allowing me to continue, bearing in mind that sites for 15 houses have already been agreed as part of the plan, I strongly urge the subcommittee to not accept the recommendations for inclusion of both of the two large sites. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Van Dalken. Right. Okay, Alan, we've got recommendation 15 first.
Yeah, so this is site GRYE 2175. This is a smaller proposal for 30 dwellings with some structural landscaping around the site. Yes, access would be required from Little Hyde Lane. Officers consider a well-landscaped smaller proposal would be considered better in this location than the previous larger proposal. As also access from the Little Yeldum Road wouldn't necessarily be appropriate. So just take a quick look at the area. As you can see, it is currently in an agricultural field. The structural landscaping was deemed necessary because there is no boundary feature that you could go up to help contain that development. And if we have a quick look, next site, this is the route from Little Hyde, from the access. So there's a small area of amenity space with a turning head there, and the other access would have been off of Little Yeldum Road, which is obviously narrow and very well landscaped, so we wouldn't have supported an access from this direction anyway. So we are recommending a smaller allocation as per recommendation 15 at para 3.49. Thank you.
Right. Members, anybody, any strong views on this one? If not, could Councillor Parker?
Yes, I think I ought to speak on this one, as it is very close to just bordering my ward, and I do know it very well. I did actually go and visit the site myself. I'm very conscious that we do need to. We've got 250 homes to find to make this shortfall to make. I appreciate the comments that have been made by the speakers about the straining infrastructure and the lack of jobs, but it is probably one of our more sustainable villages in the north, and I do agree that some of the areas in the north need to take some housing as well as areas in the south, and it is correct that Leather Lane is a nightmare to get through, along with I mentioned the parked cars. But I'm afraid to say, like everywhere nowadays, people use sat-nav to get from A to B, and they do not go on the main roads, and there is a lot of traffic that goes through that road anyway, and I'm afraid cars for 30 additional houses, I'm afraid, is probably not going to sway highways. So I actually do not object to allocating us at this site. I would have objected to the much bigger site, most definitely.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Councillor Abbott.
Yes, I agree with that, and I think whilst every sympathy with local people faced with change and development, you know, I heard the figures 5 to 10% increase in the village. Villages I represent, along with Councillor Bob Wright, we're looking at doubling Tye Green, we're looking at doubling Rivenall. I don't know what the percentage is on Silver End, but it's probably way over 50%. Yeah. And those are sort of medium-sized villages. This is, I would describe as that sort of range. It's not a hamlet and it's not a very big village. And we do have to find the numbers, and that site we've been shown, it has some constraints, but they're not as bad as others. So faced with the decisions we've got to make, I think this one has to be supported.
Yeah. Thank you. Right, no other comments on that. Could I move it? I'm not sure if you... Oh, Councillor Bowles-Finch, you're going to move allocation for that. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Ritchie. And a show of hands that is allocated. Thank you. That's unanimous. Right, the next one, 2175.
2175 is 76. Yes.
Oh, sorry. Yes, 2176. Sorry.
So this is a small development boundary alteration. So this would enable provision of up to about 10 dwellings to the land west of Nuns Walk. Its offices consider it to be quite well contained within the context of the village, and we think a small proposal could come forward. Again, it would be down to the planning application process to determine an appropriate capacity on that site, so we wouldn't be including this one in the trajectory, but it could be included in the trajectory later on in the process. Thank you.
Right. Any comment on that, members? Thank you, Councillor Finkins. Up behind a seconder, Councillor Bowles-Flint. I have a show of hands that is allocated. Thank you. Thank you, members. Right, now the next one, recommendation 17, is for a site, Steeple Bumpstead. I'm going to ask Councillor Diana Garrett, District Councillor, to come and speak. Councillor Garrett's statement will also include reference to a site at Steeple Bumpstead, which we're looking at in a few minutes, but also reference to one of the large sites, Sturmer, which we'll be considering later down on the agenda. But if you'd just like to make your statement, Councillor Garrett, again, I'm not going to ask you to come forward, read it again and again. So we'll bear that in mind. We have had copies of everybody's statements if we need to refer back to them. Thank you.
So this is just for the smaller sites, yeah?
Well, you can do all of your statement if you like.
I was asked to do it in two phases.
I think it'd be better to split it. Oh, right. Okay. Yes, that's fine.
Just very brief.
Corrected. No, that's
Thank
fine.
you, Chair.
You do the small sites and then we'll have
Good
you
evening,
back.
members. Good evening, officers. So I'm the council's representative for the Bumpstead ward, and I will just comment on the two sites, smaller sites to start with. So STEB 2285. It's a small site located in the village itself, in Steeple Bumpstead. It has been indicated to me that out of all of the sites submitted in Steeple Bumpstead, this one might be the best suited for small-scale development for reasons already provided. However, I have been asked to point out that the doctor's surgery and pharmacy closed in 2022. It no longer has a post office. Essex County Council proposed to axe the last remaining bus service, and DigiGo doesn't serve the Bumpstead ward, so it has its problems. These changes should be reflected in Braintree Council's spatial strategy going forward, as the council could not, the village could not sustain any further large-scale developments. With regards to site Helly 2206 in Hellions Bumpstead, having discussed the site with Hellions Bumpstead Parish Council and a variety of residents, I believe that officers make an accurate recommendation that this remote location is not sustainable and therefore not suitable for allocation into the local plan.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Thank you very much. Right, Alan.
Thank you. So this is LE 2206. It was put forward for 15 dwellings, but as we've said, it's outlined in the report, it's a small isolated village in the north of the district. We've set out some reasons to not recommend it for allocation as per para 3.54 of the report.
Right, members, any comments? No? Move and seconded. Councillor Bowers, you seconded. Right, can I have a show of hands that that site 2206 is not allocated? Thank you, members. Alan, do you want to do the Steeple Bumpstead one? Sorry, or does that is that
fine,
okay?
yes.
Since Councillor Garrett has spoken on that one.
Yell stop in case my eyesight fails.
Yeah,
there we go. There we go.
5. Yep, well done.
All right. So this is STEB 2285. It's been proposed for around 10 dwellings. That figure could reduce through the plan application or increase. The site doesn't have any major constraints and it has the potential to accommodate a small development subject to some heritage and access arrangements being agreed. So he set out the recommendation 24 to allocate the site at para 3.78.
Right, members moved and seconded. Councillor Coleridge, I think, just got in first. Second. Show of hands. Thank you, members. Good, thank you. That one is allocated. Right, so we go back up now to recommendation 18, land northeast of Cranes Lane, Kelvedon. I've got no speakers on this one.
Okay, so thank you very much. So, apologies. It's a very short one, this one, because this is the Cranes Lane site which we've recently lost an appeal on. As we lost the appeal, we may as well allocate it for housing development, including in the local plan. So,
yes, right. Yep, that's been moved, seconded. Show of hands. Right, thank you very much, members. That was short and sweet. Okay. Right, number 19.
Yep, so this is also in Kelvedon. So this site is land at Davy House. It's been proposed for 10 dwellings. There's one small correction in the report at Paris 3.60. It should read 72 dwellings, not hectares. So apologies for that. The site was originally rejected on flood risk grounds, as you can see the blue area on the map there. However, a smaller extent towards the front of the site may be appropriate for a small development. We will have to put a development boundary on that map, which we'll attend to if members agree with the recommendation. So as such, we are proposing to allocate a small portion of the site, and it's basically between some existing development along the road there. So recommendation 19 para 3.61.
Councillor Abbott.
Well, I used to go fishing there as well. No, I did. So we're looking at the yellow bit, yes?
The yellow, yeah.
Well, not because I mean certainly that much larger area goes right down to the river. And I think there'd be significant landscape issues with that as well. So it's just the yellow bit.
Yes, it's just the yellow bit towards the road. So the red boundary is the whole site that was submitted. It's just the yellow bit towards the top that's within the red boundary that will be is proposed for allocation.
So around 10.
Around 10,
possibly.
yes.
Yep.
Subject to planning, etc.
Okay. Right, moved, Councillor. Oh well, yes, moved and seconded. Anyway, right. Yes, members, you happy with that? Yep, good. Right, that's that one. Recommendation 20, land northwest of Panfield.
Yep, so this is Pan F2508. Site was previously recommended for allocation. However, no further information has been provided as to when the site could be developed or achieved, meaning that allocation of the site would be outside the plan period in any case. So we've not proposed to allocate the site for reasons set out in 3.63 of this report. So for reference, it's the area bound in red there, just to the south of the green buffer, west of the pink strategic growth location.
Right, Any comments? Yep, you move that one. Seconder, please. Councillor Butland. Show of hands, please. Thank you, members. Right, now, recommendation 21, we're moving on to rain, and I do have speakers on this. So, the first speaker I have is Mr. Paul Taylor, please, who's an objector. Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Good evening.
Thank you. Good evening. I previously attended the local plan subcommittee meeting on the 19th of June earlier this year and spoke against the proposed site allocations RAIN 2236 and RAIN 2244. I spoke as a resident of RAIN, where I've grown up and lived for the last 35 years, and provided my professional opinion on the proposals as a local architect with an interest in preserving the heritage of RAIN and the place I call home. My reasons against the allocation of both of these sites previously came down to the following points: location and scale of development, flood risk and drainage, as RAIN 2236 is situated within the Environment Agency's flood zones 2 and 3, which generally discourages residential development as it's not typically suitable for this, with a medium and high probability of flooding. The impact on long-established hedgerow and trees, the impact on biodiversity and wildlife, the impact on existing footpath routes designations RAIN 24, 30, 13 and 45, detrimental impact on the Flitchway Country Park, detrimental impact on the cluster and setting of the 10 Grade 2 listed buildings centred around Havering's farmhouse to the western edge of the village and north of the street where the revised area occupies and surrounds, impact on local infrastructure, amenities, and most notably the capacity of RAIN Primary School, which is already full. It is with great disappointment that after the committee previously voted with a vast majority against both site allocations, a revised proposal is now being put forward for consideration, again, just 3 months since the original refusal. I would like to remind the committee that the subject of a partial approval of RAIN 2236 was previously discussed at the committee meeting in June, but this was agreed as not suitable, as it was considered to be overdevelopment, out of context, and a possible invitation for further development. I recall that Councillor Tom Cunningham was particularly vocal on this matter, and I hope that the minutes of the previous committee meeting are available as a record for the reasons for its refusal, as a notion for the partial approval has already been discussed and a decision reached. I do not see a reason that in just 3 months anything has changed to warrant a different outcome. Yes, I acknowledge that the proposed site is smaller. The previous site was 19 hectares, and I think this has gone down to 11. But the majority of the previous reasons why this is not a suitable location remain valid. I appreciate that Braintree Council may be under pressure to meet its local housing target, but I'd suggest that revisiting previously agreed unsuitable sites is not the answer, especially when a partial allocation was discussed and subsequently refused for the aforementioned reasons. Thank you for your time and the opportunity to speak again today, and I hope that the committee stands by its original decision.
Thank you, Mr. Taylor. Thank you. The next speaker I have is Mr. Jonathan Lieberman from Hopkins Homes, who I believe is speaking in support.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members. My name is Jonathan Lieberman. I'm the Head of Planning at Hopkins Homes, who have an interest in the site at RAIN. Just a bit of background information about the company. We're the largest privately owned house builder in East Anglia, and we're renowned for building distinctive homes and environments that respect local character. We're currently building on 19 sites throughout Essex, Suffolk, Norfolk and Cambridge, and we've recently started constructing 197 homes to the south of Halstead, following approval of our reserve matters in May earlier this year. The RAIN site is well located within a sustainable location, adjacent to the northwestern edge of RAIN, being within a short walking distance of RAIN Primary and Nursery School, and a number of services and facilities on the street. As you'll be aware, and has just been mentioned, the largest site, which included land parcels to the north and south of the street, was identified as a potential allocation earlier this year. The site was subsequently not selected primarily due to concerns that related to the southern parcel and its potential impact on Flitch Way. The allocation now put forward by your officers is for the land parcel to the north of the street only for around 100 homes, thereby addressing that primary concern relating to any harm to Flitch Way. We are keen to work with your officers, the parish council and the local community to bring forward a landscape-led development that would provide a mix of house sizes and types, including affordable homes to help address local housing needs. The site presents the opportunity to create new areas of publicly accessible open space with formal play areas and to deliver strategic landscaping which would provide a landscape buffer to the western edge of Rain. New planting would be a key element of the scheme to help biodiversity, and initial reports indicate the site could provide over 10% BNG. The existing public rights-of-way, woodland belts and heritage assets would be respected and retained as part of any new development. We'd obtain specialist heritage advice to ensure the listed buildings along the street are respected, and this would be achieved by the inclusion of a suitable buffer between new and existing buildings. So also just to mention as well the point made there about flood zones, any development would be out of the flood zones. So in summary, Hopkins Homes are keen to deliver a lasting legacy, one that provides substantial benefits for both new and existing residents, which includes significant open green space. We therefore hope that you are able to support the site this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lieberman. The next speaker is Councillor Jan Willis from Rain Parish Council.
Good evening, Madam Chairman and committee members. Rain Parish Council and the residents of Rain are upset and confused as to why we are here once again, explaining why this site is not appropriate and reminding the committee why you chose to overturn officers' recommendations in June. We have emphatically objected to the entire proposed site, including the northern parcel of land. At no point have we supported this allocation in Rain. The committee too was clear that Rain should be protected, and this was not just about safeguarding heritage assets such as the Flitch Way, it was more than that. Although the project is described as landscape-led, Councillor Cunningham warned that such policies may lack the strength and clarity to prevent long-term harm, concluding that excluding the whole site would give greater protection. Nothing has changed since those comments or since the committee agreed with them. The officer's report also states that the settlement fringe study has not been carried out and that further work is needed. How can a reversal be made when not all the facts are known? Rain is a natural starting point at the listed barns, a clear and historic transition from countryside into the village. This allocation would push that boundary back, creating an unnatural extension. It is also about size. With over 100 and potentially far more dwellings proposed, this site would be almost half the size of the existing village again, completely out of proportion to Rain's scale and character. This land lies close to listed buildings and includes a beautiful avenue of protected trees. There is no connection to the sewage system here, and the officer's report highlights surface water flooding. It also serves as a vital wildlife corridor between the Flitch Way and open countryside. A troop of around 20 deer regularly use this area, along with muntjac, owls and bats. Building here would destroy the natural corridors and the biodiversity they support. It would also irreversibly damage the public right-of-way that links the tranquillity of the Flitch Way to the open fields of Duck End Green, a valued route that defines the rural setting of Rain. The additional housing would further strain our already full primary school, and the officer's report admits that the impact on local services will only be considered later at Regulation 18. Yet our school is already at capacity, we have no healthcare provision, and residents rely heavily on private cars for daily needs. So I ask, how can we, as a village, have trust in this council's processes when a decision made only a few months ago is now being revisited? I urge councillors to do the right thing again today and overturn officers' recommendations so that Rain is protected, just as this committee democratically agreed a mere 3 months ago. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Willis. Next, I have Councillor Michael Staines, District Councillor, I believe wants to speak on this item.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, members.
Good evening.
When is a decision not a decision? Like Paul, I attended on the 19th of June, and during that meeting the committee voted not to accept officer recommendations to develop RAIN 2236 in whole or part. This is correctly recorded on page 64 of the approved minutes, number 14, and the meeting can also be viewed on YouTube. RAIN 2236 is opposed by the Parish Council in whole or part, as just reiterated by Councillor Willis. How can this site come back to the local plan subcommittee tonight as an item? If allowed, will other owners and developers just submit alternative proposals for their sites rejected in whole or part by this committee later on? It will also add further anxiety to the district's residents about this local plan review process, especially those that find themselves in a new strategic growth location to the west of Braintree, where current infrastructure inadequacies are well documented. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Staines. Right, that ends the speakers on that item. So, Alan, over to you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so this is site RAIN R2236. Originally it was put forward for around about between 200 and 300 dwellings. This was rejected previously on a number of grounds, including impacts on the Flitchway, concerns about heritage, that sort of, and some other landscaping concerns. A revised proposal for 100 dwellings is being proposed this evening, which would see development on the north side of the street only. This allocation would still need to be subject to a heritage assessment, as well as that landscape sensitivity and an appropriate design. That design would need to avoid the area of flood risk on the site as well. And to address the point on education, we've been told by County Council Education that they aren't going to provide us advice at this time until we have all of our growth locations selected, as they want to be able to plan holistically for the whole district. Once we have the complete list for them, we'll be sending that to them immediately, and we will hopefully be able to get some feedback in time for the Regulation 18 consultation for that. Just to highlight to members, I've noticed for some reason the list of buildings haven't drawn on the map, which they should have done. There is a cluster of listed buildings. So the cluster of listed buildings is in this location here. There's also a TPO belt in here as well, and this is the public right of way across here, and this area here is the flood zone. Unfortunately, the way the allocation's gone, it doesn't show all of the flood zone. There's actually a bit in this corner here as well. Apologies for that, members, but there is an area of flooding there, and that would obviously not be able to be included in the developable area, and it would have to be appropriately designed so as to not significantly increase flood risk in any other locations. And again, as with the other sites, we would also need to have a highways assessment done on this site as well. We have a couple of photos. So this is the aerial of the shot, so you can see most of it is already within agricultural type uses. There are a number of trees to the rear curtilage of the heritage assets, as well as the well-established tree boundary along the public right-of-way to the south. And this is looking towards the site from the street, looking north, and that is the tree band there. And this is looking from Pod's Lane, looking east towards the site. So this is quite some quite well established vegetation around the site. So the recommendation, so we've set a recommendation 21, para 3.67 to allocate the site for residential and some recreational development. Thank you very much.
Thank you, members. Councillor Cunningham and then Councillor Hooks.
Madam Chairman, thank you very much, and thank you very much to the officers for that presentation, and in particular thanks to the representatives from the local community who've come and spoken to us today. And I want to say from the outset, I think there remains amongst all of us an absolute appreciation and an understanding of what a difficult process this is. Finding numbers when this district has taken considerable numbers in recent years, trying to go about this process the right way, not kicking it into the long grass, having the difficult conversation and bringing sites forward. And I applaud the committee for taking an honest reflection, thinking again and seeing if there are some small developable sites that have community support that could be brought back and looked again. I applaud that process totally. But with great respect to officers, this is not one such site. And whilst it has had some remodelling and a recommendation for just north of the main street, this is still a considerable site in an area that is going to have a profound impact, not just on the local community and wider communities and network, but also on what I would consider to be some of the most underrated yet special countryside in this part of Essex. And we have said repeatedly, either at local plan or planning committees, that the Fitchway is a bit of a jewel in the crown. It is something very special, and we want to preserve its unique setting. So I don't depart in any way from the comments I made earlier this year on that. I think there's also a wider point here. There are many sitting around this table, and actually district council colleagues sitting in the public gallery, who almost every Tuesday do their regular several-hour churn on the planning committee, and they know what happens with these type of applications when they come here. I haven't been on the planning committee for a few years, but I did a five-year stint, and we know what 100 houses does. We know 100 houses puts the demand on the local community, and we've heard the point made about education. I appreciate Essex County Council will make a broad representation when the full picture is known. You put the extra burden on the local community, you don't leave her in any benefit on 100 houses. And that is exactly what's going to happen with this if we allocate this allocation. Over the years, and I've been in the area just over 40 of them, and my family has lived on two locations, a little country lane that leads from Rain to the London Road Braintree. And that little country lane has changed immeasurably. It has, first of all, it had the Braintree bypass in 1989 that went across it. From the early 90s, it had the development of Great Notley Garden Village, which totally enveloped the area. And subsequently, the Great Notley bypass cutting through it. And the urban area of Braintree and Bocking has expanded dramatically during that area. It has taken the houses. And as a result, what has been the real benefit in terms of infrastructure? Once again, we are completely failed on the A12, but particularly in that local area, the A120, leading to Alley's Corner, the largest car park. Now, what has that got to do specifically with Rain? Well, actually, the bypass around Rain is actually quite a good bit of road, but a few hundred yards up, you start to join the tailbacks. And the impact of that is that the local resilience network becomes totally clogged up. And it's been extraordinary the last 2 or 3 years to see how that resilience network around the village of Rain has deteriorated and is under additional strain. So I think 100 houses that brings no real benefit to Rain, that spoils the setting of Rain, I think jeopardises our overall position in putting a line in the sand to speculative developers that suggest that actually just because the wider settlement, the Braintree and Bocking settlement, has taken extensive development, therefore that all the villages around are fair game for the same. I think a line in the sand needs to go. Madam Chairman, I would equate those comments to Halstead and Whittam as well. But we're dealing with this particular site here, so I stand by the staunch criticism and disapproval of inclusion of this in the local plan, even in its reduced form this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham. Would you like to follow that, Councillor Hooks?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor Cunningham's probably said very much what I would agree and echo. But as the ward member for Rain, I do feel I need to say my piece. you've heard from residents and the parish council alike, and residents aren't in agreement with this at all, and never have been, whether it was the whole site or the smaller allocation that we're looking at tonight. It was made that the primary concern was the Flitchway. It wasn't the only primary concern. Yes, it is the jewel in the crown that comes through our village, but also that links, that the land that we're looking at tonight links on to that jewelness. That's maybe not quite the word, but you get my meaning, that it adds to Rain. I obviously wasn't in this seat during the meeting in June, but I was in the public gallery watching proceedings, and it was very evident that this committee wanted to protect Rain on its western edge, and just taking away the southern part wasn't going to do that. And there was the concern that the landscape development wasn't going to be enough, policies were not going to be strong enough to protect us. So to not allocate this does give Rain protection. Rain is under threat from solar farms, and we all know what's on the agenda for next week. So I think if we can have a buffer, that piece of land will help. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Hooks. Any other member? Councillor Bowes-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I feel that I should speak on this because once upon a time, a long time ago, Rain Village was on a par with Cressing. And I just need to point out to all of those people who are protecting their own areas, which is quite right, and so you should, and to a certain extent Braintree Council has as well. But there is nothing to stop anybody putting planning permission in on that land, us refusing it, possibly, and it going to appeal, and it be won. And hence just look at the growth in Cressing, Silver End and Rivenall, very close by, have all been won on appeal. So just whilst we can all do what we can to protect these areas, to me they're not 100% protected. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowes-Flint. Right. Anybody else like to make any comments? No? Right. Would somebody like... Thank you, Councillor Monday. Does that have a seconder? Councillor Hooks, I'll go to you. So that's been moved and seconded that we do not allocate the site. Can I have a show of hands on that, please? Right, thank you. Anyone against? All right. I think that's fine. Thank you, members. Right. Okay. So we move on to recommendation 22, which is Ridgewell.
Thank you very much. So this site is Ridge 2248. It's been put forward for 12 dwellings. Officers still consider this to be an inappropriate backland development site. We've had a number of concerns raised about the development impacts on the development's potential impact on local highways, traffic, parking and heritage. In addition, concerns have been raised about the impact of the development on the adjacent industrial site. If that site goes over to residential use, then the industrial site has lighting in the evening, delivery lorries, forklift truck operations, which could result in complaints from neighbouring residents, which could potentially hinder existing industrial activities, as well as potentially endangering future growth plans for the expansion of the site. So the site is considered to be inappropriate backland development with poor access, and the recommendation is to not allocate the site for the reasons set out in paragraph 3.69 of the report.
Thank you, Alan. Thank you, Councillor Winkler. Seconded, Councillor Parker. Do you want to speak on that one?
I want to speak on my ward.
That's fine. Yes, sorry.
I did think it was worth having this reconsidered, but I agree with the officer's recommendation. And thank you, Alan, for the comments about the industrial site next door. I think that is actually really puts a complete no-no on it. Thank you for explaining that. So I will happily second that
So that's been moved and seconded not for allocation. Will I have a show of hands, please, members? Thank you very much. That's unanimous. Right, recommendation 23, please, Anna, which is Shalford.
Yeah, so this is Shall 2263 A and 2263B. These sites are currently being considered through the neighbourhood plan or draft neighbourhood plan for the area. It's not proposed to allocate them as per paragraph 3.73. However, if the parish council or through the neighbourhood plan would like to pursue one of these allocations to potentially enable a public right-of-way round the back towards the primary school, then they could do that through a neighbourhood plan. It's a small scale, potentially a small scale site, which would be non-strategic in nature, so they could quite, if they wanted to pursue it through a neighbourhood plan, they could do so. Thank you.
Right, Councillor Bowers-Flint has got in and moved that. Does that have a seconder? Councillor Ritchie. Show of hands, please. Thank you, members. That's that one. The next one, recommendation 24, was Steeple Bumpstead, which we've actually covered. We've done, haven't we? So we will go on to 25, Toppersfield, which Councillor Van Dalken mentioned in his earlier statement.
Okay. Yeah. So this is two sites, top 2294 and 2295. They're both small development boundary extensions. They're designed to enable some small-scale development to come forward in this location. They wouldn't contribute to supply until an application was granted. However, the site has limited constraints, and subject to highways and heritage, a development boundary could be accommodated in this location. Recommendation 25 is at para 3.81 to identify a development boundary.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. Seconded, Councillor Finken. Show of hands, please. Members happy to allocate that. Thank you. A small development. Good. And then finally, recommendation 26, land north of Whittam.
Okay, this is site WITN2. Oh, apologies.
Sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, Councillor Martin, I've forgotten you need to leave us for a moment.
It's very dangerous, bit white.
Oh dear. Wow, yes. Okay, right. Okay, fine, thank you.
Okay. So this is site site WITN 2252. This is a smaller extent than previously proposed to the north of Whittam off the B1018. The site was originally proposed for about 300 dwellings. So we're proposing to reduce that capacity down to about 125 dwellings. So there are some issues we would need to assess, so impact on highways and traffic in the area. However, there are no other major constraints presently on the site. As such, we are proposing to allocate the site for about 100 houses. And this is an aerial view of the site, so you can see that there is it's currently in agricultural use. There is a hedgerow through part of it, which we would have to, or the planning application would have to consider how to best deal with that. And there currently isn't a natural real boundary to it, so we may also have to consider some structural landscaping as part of the allocation as well. And if we just have a quick look, this is the current field, so it's quite, it's an agricultural field next to a main town. I think it's in the next item it scores reasonably well in terms of landscape sensitivity. So yes, we are proposing an allocation for 100 homes as per recommendation 26, para 3.85.
Right, Councillor Abbott.
Well, although this is smaller than last time, I've still got significant concerns, but I'd like to make a suggestion.
Yeah.
My understanding is the only access could be off the B1018, which is where this photograph's taken from, which means it's almost like there's two parcels. The hedgerow you can see through the middle of the picture on the left, you'd have to go through that. Unless you're going to build a bridge or a tunnel, you've got to go through it.
Okay.
So my suggestion is we allocate the bit in front of us and not go beyond that hedge. I've just been totting up how many we've got tonight. We've got about 190 and we need 250. So we don't need to allocate 125 to get to the 250.
Okay.
The other thing is that I compared the area of site officers were recommending tonight with the 300. And curiously, although they're saying this would be 125, this site's 2/3 the size of the 300 site. So it doesn't scan to me why we are allocating so much land for that number of houses. And also, if our target tonight is 250, we don't have to allocate that anyway. So my suggestion is, and again, as per what I said earlier, that we've got to find the housing, but also because the only access is onto the B1018, and that's anyone who knows B1018, the safety issues along that road are critical. We don't want to be having too much extra traffic coming along there. We just allocate the front bit.
Okay. Alan, would you like? Do you want to come back on that before I?
Happy to do that. So we could have a smaller extent on the site. We'll obviously check the area issue, and then we'd only want to allocate an appropriate size allocation to enable that level of housing to come forward. So we could amend for reducing size that site. That shouldn't be a problem. Yes, we would need to discuss the access as well. Whether that is, if there is potential to get through the existing development adjacent to it. I believe there is some open space towards the front of the site, which perhaps could potentially be linked in with some sort of pedestrian or cycleway, something like that. Those things would have to be explored, with the site promoter. So yeah, we would be happy to put a smaller extent in, probably stick some structural landscaping in there as well, to reduce any potential, harm. And yeah, we can certainly do that. Yes.
Okay, so Councillor, we could put in a revised allocation and then bring it back for a final decision later. Okay. Anybody else? Any comments on that at all? Councillor Butland.
I'd like to propose what I said.
Just through, yes,
is that we go up to that hedge line.
Yes, yeah.
Which is a natural boundary. The access is onto the B101. I don't think there is an alternative. I know that area so well, because residents who live in that cluster of houses, who actually now would be surrounded, had me in many times when the Conrad Road development was being built, because they were concerned about access issues.
Okay.
So I think in the spirit of we need the numbers, but also finding a decent compromise, this could be the one.
We'd be looking at maybe 50, 60 homes potentially. Right, that's moved. Councillor Councillor Richard, did you want to?
So I was just going to add to that. So I think given the presentation and given the maps in front of us, I think it's quite clear to see what's being proposed without any need to come back to discuss this.
That's
so
fine.
happy to second.
Yeah, that's fine. Councillor Bowsford, you second. Yes, sorry, Councillor Butler.
Just for clarity, what upper number are we putting on? So, did I hear 60?
Well,
we need to find 60, but that excludes the site we looked at just now on the neighbourhood plan.
Okay.
But my suggestion is for now we just allocate up to that hedge, which I think might not be far off the mark.
Okay. I think Sarah would like to.
Yeah, I think we probably take away and remeasure what that site area is, and then work out. We sort of take roughly 60% of the site capacity, and then apply a density. So I think we can work out the figure, and when it comes back as the draft plan, that figure will be in the. But yeah, we will adjust it in accordance with the formula we've been using for all of the sites.
Yes. Okay, that makes sense. Right. So I think that has been moved and seconded. So could I have a show of hands, please? All right, anybody against? Thank you, Councillor Ridge. Right, that's that. We'll just get Councillor Martin back in. Just bear with me a moment.
Chairman, as you've taken individual votes on those items, it's clear for those watching the meeting which sites have been agreed for draft allocation and those which have been approved for.
Right, so I don't need to do a round.
No,
No,
Chair.
right, that's fine. Right, members, that has concluded that agenda item. Now, we've been going for about an hour and 3/4. I was going to propose anyway that we have a 10-minute break. Would you like to have that break now before we do the landscape assessment? Yep, yes, all right, good. 10-minute, well, let's say back at 8:30. That gives you just a little bit more than 10 minutes. Thank you. We'll get going again, please. So we have agenda item 6, which is Braintree District Settlement Fringe Study Landscape Sensitivity Assessment 2025. And this is with Alan, please.
Thank you very much. Braintree Councillors Commission east of the A131, north of the A120, yes, next to Straits Mill. This takes into account committed and already allowed development. So the hatched red areas are where development has taken place since the previous plan was done. So if we go on to the next village, so this is the map for Coggeshall. There's some very sort of highly sensitive areas to the south of Coggeshall, which is the dark green area there. The previous site to the committee allocated to the eastern side is of a lower sensitivity, and the site to the west of Coggeshall, the area to the west of the Coggeshall is of also a lower sensitivity as well. The next one here, this is Earl's Cone, Earl's Cone, yeah, so got a lot of sensitive areas, particularly the area around the golf course, so pretty much the majority of the countryside around Earl's Cone, to a lesser extent White Cone is identified as sensitive. And moving on, this is Halstead. The majority of the south of Halstead remains as medium capacity as per the previous study, with some lower sensitivity areas to the northeast and higher areas of sensitivity to the north. Going to the next one, so here this is around Hatfield-Peveril. The area between Hatfield-Peveril and Witham was assessed by the Hatfield-Peveril Neighbourhood Plan, which was done by the same company that we've commissioned, so we would be relying on that piece of evidence base for, as it's done to the same standard. But there are areas of higher sensitivity at Hatfield-Peveril to the south. There is a lower sensitivity area which we have previously identified for some housing, a small amount of housing just to the south of Stonepath Drive, so there's no need to change your recommendation there or anything like that. And this is the next area, so this is around the Kingstein Fearing area. Again, lower, so there's a lower sensitivity towards the village, and as you move further away, it gets a little bit higher in terms of sensitivity. And this is Sybil Headingham, Castle Headingham, generally considered to be quite sensitive in all locations. We're not proposing any significant developments in that location. This next one is Silver End. So lower sensitivity to the east and west of Silver End, with higher sensitivity areas to the north and further to the west. Again, we haven't got any major development proposals here. And Witham, majority of Witham was previously assessed as medium capacity. There is lower capacity areas to the north around the B1018, which where the site is we've previously been talking about, and a high sensitivity area between Witham and Rivenhall. Rivenhall towards the top there. And the report, we also asked the consultants to do an assessment of our green buffers. So they've come back to us. Unfortunately, some of the green buffers are recommended to be deallocated as they don't serve the purpose, their purpose, which is to prevent coalescence, or they've unfortunately we've previously lost appeal. So the first green buffer here, as you can see, doesn't really, it's proposed to delete the land between Bocking and High Garrett, because there's not much left there to prevent in terms of coalescence, unfortunately. Particularly in landscape terms. If members wanted to keep it in terms of sort of settlement separation, then yes, but in landscape terms, it's not particularly good at its job at the moment. The next one, this one is land at Deanery Hill. There isn't really much in terms of settlement to keep separated here. While traditionally there is sort of the Bocking end of it and Bocking North. There's not really any development threat in this location along the river valley at this time. And Panfield, good news on this one. They recommended we're expanding this one a little bit. So this is the one between Panfield and Bocking, Braintree. So, yeah, that is recommended for some expansion. The expansions aren't shown on the map at this time. They will be included in the Regulation 18 draft, which will come to this committee. We just need to do a little bit of work on actually defining where they'll be, but they will be added to the maps and available for members to look at a little bit later. This is the current buffer between Rain. I think they've recommended some inclusions for some additional fields here, particularly between Rain and the A120 towards Great Notley. So that one will be getting a little bit bigger. This is the one at the river, the Blackwater Nature Reserve. It's proposed to be removed, or recommended to be removed, as it doesn't serve that separation function. There's also quite a lot of other protective designations in this area, including protections such as it's identified already for informal recreation, that sort of thing. So it is an existing park, so it doesn't serve its purpose. And it's a good idea to not over-allocate in terms of your green buffers, because the more supported they are by the evidence base, the more robust they are later when you get to appeals and things like that. So it should be a little bit better to protect them. And this is the one between Great Notley, it's in Black Notley Parish, so between Great Notley and Black Notley. They have recommended some extensions towards the south of this one as well. So it's not all bad news in terms of green buffers. So we've proposed that we'll lose, I think it's about 3 of them. But again, this one's for Sybil Hedingham, Castle Hedingham, and that's also been recommended for some inclusion. That's a spray.
Right. Thank you very much. I thought that was it's a very good report, and the section on green buffers particularly interesting. Yes, Councillor Bowes-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Can you go back to the map of Bocking with High Garrett on it, please? This is the ward that I represent, and I think everybody in Bocking will feel that they've been absolutely swamped with development over the last few years. So if there is any way that we can keep that in through separation, I would appreciate it, and I'm sure the people of Bocking would appreciate that, because, yeah, I don't need to say to you how much development has gone on there, and they do like their little bit of independence that they've still got. So if that could just be there, that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Right, thank you. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. A couple of comments on page 72 on the table of criteria. The one on tranquility and dark skies, I was very pleased to see. You might not be surprised to hear me say. But I thought the nuance in there, I just thought I'd draw out. So the assumption, I think, is that the more rural you are, the more likely you are to be tranquil and dark skies. Mm. It doesn't necessarily follow. I can tell you for a fact. The centre of Whittam after 1 a.m. at night is so quiet and dark with the county council streetlights go off. It's astonishing. It's like being in the countryside. So it doesn't necessarily follow, although I think the criteria is really good. The bit I wanted to specifically talk about was Rivenhall. Did you show a slide for the Rivenhall green buffer? Yeah, I'm very pleased to see it staying in, obviously, and I know we've discussed this area so many times, both here and at Planning Committee, and the text in the report says that it's completely justified to keep it. There is, though, a rather strange line at the top of the second section on page 207, which says that the old rectory, Glebe Farm and Rickstones Road have been subsumed into the larger urban area of Whittam. Well, they definitely haven't. I mean, you know, if you know the area and walk along Rectory Lane, that is identifiably part of Rivenhall and is rural. So I just wanted to draw that out. But other than that, I'm very pleased to see we're keeping the green buffer. And I did pick up on the officer comment that the little It's too small on there to almost point it out, but the bit of land we have allocated, or draft allocated, which I think the consultant said they wanted to put in the green buffer, but that might conflict with us having the draft allocation. I mean, I'd still stick with that is a preferable site for a small village extension than building in any of the land between Whittam and Rivenhall. So I just wanted to mention that, you know, I stick with the original point that that's where some housing could go, and I find myself arguing about an extension, arguing against an extension to the green buffer in that area, but I think it works as a package. But overall, I'm very pleased to see it still there. Rivenhall is, I think everyone recognises around this committee, is one of the communities most under pressure from disappearing into a growing neighbouring town.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Parker.
Yes, thank you. I've read through all the green buffers and have noted that the recommendations from the consultants about the case for extension, where they felt there was a case for extension. So thank you for clarifying that will then be included in the draft that goes to Regulation 18 consultation, because that was my questions. Didn't quite understand how that fitted in. The only settlement that is not included, and it is not included because it wasn't included in the original green buffer, is Sturmer. Sturmer is right next to Haverhill, which I appreciate is in Suffolk, but there is a strong case, I feel, to be made to make sure that there is no coalescence between Haverhill and Sturmer. Okay. And I wonder whether we could ask our consultants to look at imposing a green buffer between, or looking at whether a green buffer should be put between Haverhill and Sturmer. Obviously, Haverhill is a huge settlement, bigger than Whittam probably, and Sturmer is a very small village, so we're looking at a comparable situation here. And I feel that for some reason it's been overlooked in the past, and I think we ought to address it.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Parker. Yes, Alan.
Just to say that the landscape report does provide some guidance on where we could identify new green buffers. I think they refer to if there's going to be less separation than 500 metres. I think the distance between Sturmer and Haverhill is about 400 metres, I think, to the roundabout at the A131, I believe. We could identify a green buffer in that location, I think, using the guidelines set out in the report. So yeah, it's a bit of work we could look at a little bit later, I think. But
all right, good. Yeah, take that on board. Councillor Hooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. In regards to the buffer between Rain and Braintree, you mentioned about it's going to be extended.
Yes.
But on page 197 of the agenda, where the table is, it says the case for extension. The last part says, and the extent as it is currently defined is probably the most justified option, which makes sound in that it's not being extended.
I think the nuance on it was that you could extend it if you wanted to, because there is obviously still some potential. There is still some separation between Rain and the A120, so you could fill in that gap. But what the current extent we have is, I'm going to say, is most appropriate. But there could be the option to extend it if we wished to. So that's the way I interpreted it.
Okay, because obviously we have had an issue where a lot of money has been spent by this council at appeals on that area in the past, and obviously, unfortunately, one has slipped through the net, and I think that is mentioned in the report. But what else can we do to make that more robust? We can't, I'm guessing.
By getting an adopted local plan through as quickly as possible, which retail housing need, unfortunately, is the answer for that one.
Okay.
So,
and my last question is, obviously, I'm guessing this report is just dealing with like the current buffer zones that we have. Obviously, over the next 3 weeks, we're looking at allocating large sites next to other towns and villages. Obviously, we've got one later on. But for example, if the site next week between Rain and Sailing, what kind of buffer can we then add in to protect Rain from that? And the same with any other applications that come through that aren't already there.
I'd refer to the guidance in the evidence base that talks about if there's going to be a situation where you have less than 500 metres separation. So if an allocation came forward that was within 500 metres of rain, then you would be justified in having a green buffer between those two villages to prevent coalescence.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Parker.
Just a very small point. It's just the cover page for this report describes itself as a draft. Is it a draft or not?
There's a couple of non-substantive changes that need to be made, such as removing draft, and I think there's an appendix XX in here somewhere which will be updated. So there's a couple of little corrections like that will need to be made, but nothing that affects the fundamentals of the document.
Okay, thank you. Right. Anybody else have any comments on this? No. Yes, Councillor Abbott.
From the ward member, I don't know if that's a proposal as an amendment that we don't delete the green buffer at Bodkin. I'd support that.
Thank you. Right, okay. So the recommendation is on page 50, which is that the Braintree District Settlement Fringe Study Landscape Sensitivity Assessment is agreed to be part of the evidence base for the Braintree District Local Plan with that amendment. So could I have somebody to move that, please? Councillor Abbott, and a seconder, Councillor Bowes-Flint. So could I have a show of hands on that, please? Thank you, members. That is unanimous. Good. Well done. Okay, so now we move on to agenda item 7, large-scale strategic site assessment, North area. Sarah, this is over to you. I'm just looking to see where I've got speakers. No, I've got nobody on the first one. Right, so Sarah, over to you, and then I'll call speakers forward as we come to those items.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, members. So this report is assessing sites which have the potential to provide 500 or more homes, either individually or in combination. Given the number of strategic sites submitted in response to call for sites process, we're considering the northern part of the district this evening. So the first site for consideration, you've seen on the landscape impact, the landscape character assessment, that this is quite a sensitive site. So this is 45 hectares, Earl 2125, with capacity for around 1,125 homes. It's to the north of the settlement. Earlscombe is a key service village, so it's relatively sustainable for a proportionate level of housing growth. So there's facilities in the village and local services, including a primary school, healthcare provision, retail and regular bus services. So it's well placed to accommodate modest growth. The main access would be utilising the golf club access. It's not clear how that would serve a large housing site, but that would be something to be explored. We think that the site has harm in terms of designated heritage assets, including some which are within the red line boundary. It's largely open and would significantly impact the landscape setting of Earlscombe. So as a result, it is not recommended to allocate this site as a strategic growth location. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Right. Councillor Bowes-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. If you've served on any planning committee of this council over the last, I don't know how many years, this has had planning, they've applied for planning permission for this several times. And each time it's been refused. And it's been refused for a very good reason. So I would move officer's recommendation on this particular site. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Bowes-Flint. Seconded by Councillor Abbott. Does anybody wish to make any comment on it? No? Right. It's been moved and seconded that that site is not allocated. Can I have a vote on it, please? Thank you, members. That's unanimous. Right. Now, the second site to be considered is former RAF Wethersfield Air Base, and I have a couple of speakers on this. The first speaker is Mr John Pearce from Wethersfield Parish Council Neighbourhood Plan Working Group. Oh, yes, sorry, Councillor Cunningham needs to leave the room.
Good evening, members.
Good evening.
I represent Wethersfield Parish Council as a member of its neighbourhood plan team. Following extensive engagement, Finchingfield and Wethersfield Parish Councils have recently lodged a joint draft submission neighbourhood plan with your officers for screening and statutory consultation. Part of the plan focuses on the future of the airbase to help achieve a healthy and sustainable community. Many factors shape its policy direction, in particular its remote location, history and character, and its setting in the surrounding countryside. In recognition of some of its potential, the site has recently been identified as a strategic opportunity in the Essex Local Nature Recovery Strategy. It's been assessed as part of a valued landscape in an independent landscape study. It's been assessed by Place Services as having the special historic qualities to justify designation as a conservation area, and it's had the former weapon storage area statutorily listed. Within that context, the draft plan identifies opportunities to deliver sustainable development and make a small contribution to district-wide housing need and business growth in green sectors of the economy. This is by locating new built development on clearly defined, previously built-up areas of the site, whilst maintaining its sense of openness and historic character. Thus, the draft neighbourhood plan seeks to achieve a balance between growth and protection by exploiting the characteristics of the site and the surrounding area. It acknowledges that different segments of the sites have a potential for new uses which would benefit the local area and the wider district by providing housing that meets local need, renewable energy, community uses, recreation, nature recovery and business opportunities. There's a general agreement that a master plan should guide the future development of the site. The Parish Council agrees with officers that the site is not appropriate for wholesale development and accepts the range of uses referred to in the report. There is no conflict with officer views, but the draft neighbourhood plan goes considerably further than the draft local plan policy by setting out detailed guidelines that indicate permissible development and the shape of a master plan. This includes an indication of the scale, nature and location of built development, while setting out clear criteria for protecting and enhancing the openness, historic character, accessibility, ecology and the landscape of the site. The remoteness of the site, the potential conservation area status and its recognised nature recovery and landscape significance are key factors that must predicate appropriate future development of the various segments of the site. One would expect a neighbourhood plan to set out a more granular... One would expect a neighbourhood plan to set out a more granular, detailed policy for the site than the wider local plan. The Parish Councils hope that as the local plan and neighbourhood plan progress, they will together provide clarity and compatibility in forming a development plan that provides a clear policy basis to guide the future balanced development of the airbase site and deliver the very considerable potential benefits that could offer to the local area and the wider community. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr Pearce. Thank you. The next speaker I have on this item is Councillor Roger Duffin from Finchingfield Parish Council.
Good evening, Chairman and Committee. Thank you for letting me come to speak on behalf of Finchingfield Parish Council. We are impressed with the work that goes into the review of the local district plan, and therefore this is a very short and simple comment. I agree with everything my colleague has said. He's been away, so we haven't actually discussed each other's presentations. Remarkably, we've arrived at similar conclusions. We do note the planning officer's recommendations, thank you for those, on Wethersfield Airfield to the subcommittee, and our neighbourhood plan broadly supports them. It's wonderful to be on the same side as the District Council. I said that last time I was here, so it's nice to be able to say that twice. However, we'd like to suggest that the recommendations are not prescriptive enough. that's where we're on the same page. It's a long-term plan for BDC and for Finchingfield and Wethersfield, and whilst BDC know more about it than us, I expect any speculative developer would look at the plan and spot the openings in it and focus on opening those up. And I don't believe that's actually what the district or the neighbourhood plan want. It's a very special site. All of the things that John mentioned about the local nature recovery strategy, other things as well. So it needs to be protected. Around 80% of the base is in the parish of Wethersfield, and we've seen 22% growth in housing in our village over the last couple of years, and recent housing developments have proved very hard to sell. According to their report, the consultants to the owners of the site, which is the Home Office, were instructed to make representations to BDC. With Wethersfield PC, Finchingfield are working hard on a neighbourhood plan, which my colleagues mentioned. Research on this has shown there's actually not much need for housing in our particular area, which is why the houses are not selling very much, apart from a small need for affordable housing. The current housing shortage countrywide doesn't appear to extend to poorly accessible areas, which is something that the Braintree District Council are very aware of. It's in their report about how access is very difficult. BDC plans have noticed the poor access to the airbase from all directions. The parish's view is that the number of houses should not increase significantly from the current 150 on the base. The HO consultant says that this should increase on the same footprint. We agree with this and suggest that this should be set to a maximum of 150 to 200 on the same footprint. Broadly, we agree with the recommendations made at 3:30 in the officer's report, but would request that the draft policy is strengthened to make commercial development and housing development appropriate to the area and employment provided to be appropriate to the community, with opportunities for individuals to advance their careers, minimising traffic expansion. Just getting there, can we ask for councillors and planners involved to approve a version taking the above amendments into place? Basically just make it, we're on the same page, just make it a bit more prescriptive. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Duffin. And I agree, it is nice to be on the same side, even if only sometimes. Right, that's the end of speakers on that item. So, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So, yes, this is an isolated site in a rural location away from the trunk road network. So access is constrained from Finchingfield and Sybil Headingham. There are several constraints on the site, including local wildlife sites, contaminated land, listed buildings on both on and adjacent, and the site is very open. So in terms of the current use, obviously it's in use as an asylum centre, which has planning permission until 2027. Although the site has been submitted for consideration as part of the local plan, only limited information has been provided, so we don't have a huge sense of direction as to what the landowner is looking to do with it. The information submitted suggests there's potential for renewable energy production or mixed-use development that could come forward in 5 to 10 years. And the submission indicates that the landowner is undertaking formal master planning for a range of uses across the site. In terms of the issues and options consultation response, they suggest that our spatial strategy be broadened to include sites that are physically well related to existing settlements and brownfield sites outside of settlements that could be made sustainable. And they note that in relation to this site, there's an opportunity through proper master planning to create a new community that makes a more efficient use of the existing site, with the potential to create more housing on the existing footprint where the service family accommodation was located. But there is considerable uncertainty in terms of what is deliverable on the site with the landowner currently. And for that reason, we are proposing, we're recommending a high-level policy. So that high-level policy is deliberately at a high level because the DPD or an area action plan would do exactly what the neighbourhood plan community is asking for, but you don't put that detail in at this stage. What you do is you open the door for that policy document to come forward. Depending on which policy document we went with, both of those would be subject to their own consultation and engagement. So that would give the opportunity to have that community engagement in terms of input into the development of what happens on the site at a later date. So in the local plan, it should be high level, and then have a supporting document that's in more detail, if that makes sense. That's the basis for the recommendation. And then for context, there's an image of Google. Thank you.
Thanks, Sarah. Councillor Butland, you indicated first, I think.
Thank you, Chairman. I speak as County Councillor for that area. I mean, I'm very, very supportive of a master planning for the Wethersfield site. My memory serves me right. I think it was 2016 that I recall a meeting upstairs with, I can't remember at that stage which government department, or whether it was even Homes England, who came along and sounded us out about 5,000 plus houses on that site. We took the view that that was not a sensible solution, given where the site was and the isolated nature of it. So I do very much support that. And I also want to applaud the community, as we've seen two members tonight, for the very positive efforts that they have been doing, and working closely with both ourselves and ECC to come up with a plan for the whole area. So I very much support the recommendations that are before us tonight.
Thank you, Councillor Butland. Councillor Abbott.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Yes, I support this proposal, and I also agree with Councillor Butland about local community being part of the main drive to get a good solution. I think that's always a good thing. I like the sound of nature-led. Redevelopment's the wrong word in that sense, isn't it? But a nature-led proposal, we need that. We remain one of the most nature-depleted countries in Europe. It's getting worse. The reports in the last few months have shown that government promises of nature recovery are going in the wrong direction. So if this contributes to that. But I think the hard question is, given, as we've been discussing earlier, that we've got to go to an inspector with numbers, what are we looking at on numbers here? Because I know it's very early stages, but is it going to, is the officer view that it's going to be something along the lines that the local community are looking at of a few hundred, including what's there now? Or are we going to get pressure from the landowners who, once they see an allocation, says, oh, right, we're going to come in with thousands? I think if there's any clarity on that, it would be really helpful.
Thank you. Sarah.
I think there's a huge constraint in terms of the road network that would need to be overcome to achieve a large quantum of housing on this site. So, you know, I think the development level on that site will be curbed by the fact that the transport is not going to serve a huge number of housing. I think that this policy is designed to open the door for more detail, and that more detail being essentially a master plan that shows, you know, where the residential areas would be, where the nature recovery would be, where employment would be. So I think we can't really say, we don't really know what the government's intention is for the site at this point, in terms of whether they will continue the existing planning permission, leave the site, extend the planning permission. We don't know any of that. So this is as much as we can do to guide seeing something come forward on the site that the community wishes to see.
Thank you. Councillor Bowes-Flint.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Councillor Butland indeed is right that we did speak to them, and I think at the time it was the Ministry of Defence who actually owned the land. And they did speak to us about 5,000 houses, which obviously we were aghast at. But the big stopping point for them was the road network, and they could not argue against that because it could not contain that amount of housing on that site. So I think the way we're going is the correct way, and Councillor Abbott is right indeed in this is a nature-led plan, because there is a lot of nature and there's a lot of wildlife on that site. And it's one that we need to protect big time. So I think we're going in the right way, and I think it's fair to say that we actually are agreeing with the parishes on this as well. So we're heading in the right direction, possibly not the direction that the government will want with numbers, but I think we can substantiate the reasons why, purely and simply on highways, if nothing else. Thank you.
Thank you. I have Councillor Parker and then Councillor Butland would like to come back, I think.
Thank you. Yes, I think this is delighted to see this proposal. Actually, I think this will hopefully remove the sort of uncertainty that's been hovering over this site and affecting everybody who lives nearby. So I think this is a wonderful proposal, actually, and so glad to see that the community are closely involved in, going to be closely involved in developing it. One thing I think is not mentioned is the historic importance of that site during the Cold War, and certainly when I went to Wethersfield to some presentation in the past, they've got a wonderful history society there, and it really opened my mind as to how important that site was, not just during the Second World War but the Cold War, and anything that can really would be great educational opportunities as well, possibly to teach children about the Cold War. So anyway, I'm jumping ahead of myself here, but just to put a note down about that. Thank you.
That's fine, thank you. Councillor Butland, you wanted to come back.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just very quickly, in 2016 we made the point it was access. We said basically you would have to drive a new road off the A120 through there to make that done. Given the news about funding of infrastructure in other parts of Essex at the moment, I really can't see that happening at all, but it's something we should cling to. You could not put 5,000 houses and expect it to be serviced by the existing road network. I say road network. In many cases, it's a lane network. Right. I think we're making the right decision.
Thank you. Councillor Abbott.
Just briefly, Madam Chairman, looking at the wording on the third bullet point, should that not be any development on the site would protect and enhance sensitive historic and natural assets? Because it's not an alternative.
No. Yeah, you're right. Okay. Yep. Hold on, we can amend that. Right. Any other comments? Right. Councillor Bowser has moved the recommendation, which I'll just read, that the former RAF Wethersfield Air Base is identified on the local plan inset map for redevelopment, and that the draft policy is included in the new local plan. And you seconding, Councillor Butland, thank you. Can I have a show of hands on that, please? That's unanimous. Thank you, members. And although I agree, although we've got no clarity at all on what might eventually happen on the site, I think it is quite right that it's identified in the local plan. Right, okay. We move on. Recommendation 3. Now, this is a clutch of Halstead sites. I have a couple of speakers on this. First speaker is Councillor Paul Foster from Greensted Green and Halstead Rural Parish Council. Thank you, Councillor Foster. Thank you for bearing with us. I know it's been a long evening.
Thank you, Chairman. I wish to make a statement on behalf of the Parish Council in respect of item 7 and recommendation 3 about land north and east of Halstead. Following on from the Parish Council's comments reported on page 224 of your report, the Parish Council submitted a response to the issues and options consultation in March, which is not referenced in the report before you. We stated that a large number of the call for sites that have come forward around Halstead lie within Greensted Green and Halstead Rural. As a largely rural parish council, we would normally seek to resist further development in the parish. However, it's clear that the long-awaited Halstead bypass will only be delivered privately, that is through Section 106 and 278 legal agreements attached to new planning permissions for housing. The new local plan review could be the opportunity for the bypass to be delivered. However, this would be dependent upon a number of conditions, and I've listed 3. The first being a coordinated and managed fund which all housing developers would be expected to sign up to deliver the bypass in phases. Secondly, support from both BDC and Essex County Council to enable the bypass to be properly designed and route options carefully considered. And thirdly, a recommendation that some of the Section 106 monies for community infrastructure should be set aside to Greensted Green and Halstead Rural. Hampstead Town Council wrote to Braintree District Council in May to endorse this approach, as referenced in the report at paragraph 345. The Parish Council met on Wednesday the 17th of September, so last week, to confirm its support for the strategic allocation of land north and east of Hampstead. We note that the joint statement from the landowners and promoters says that the allocation will deliver up to 2,750 new homes and the potential of a new bypass. We welcome the officer's overall assessment that this allocation has the potential to provide sustainable growth and a new relief road to address existing congestion around Hampstead. However, we would like to see recommendation 3 strengthened to state that land north and east of Hampstead is allocated as a strategic growth location for the purposes of delivering a relief road around Hampstead. With the current population of Hampstead at around 12,500 people, 2,750 new dwellings will result in an increase in the population of the town by 50%, 50. The development of this substantial number of new houses in and around Hampstead would simply not be sustainable unless the delivery of a relief road was a priority piece of infrastructure which is vital for the future of the town and its surroundings. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Foster. Next I have Councillor Paul Nunn from Hampstead Town Council. Thank you, Councillor Nunn. Thank you for waiting to speak.
Good evening, everyone. As a council, we accepted the smaller infill developments, but we voted against the larger developments surrounding the town, in that they were all very large and would overload the infrastructure, even more so than at present. Our schools and surgeries are already oversubscribed, so there would be a huge need for new schools and surgeries, and these developments would overwhelm Hampstead and change it to a very different place from the rural town that it feels like today. It may also result in a bypass which would decimate our high street independent shops and businesses by diverting the thoroughfare of traffic away from the high street. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Nunn. Right, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So we're assessing these sites, Cole 2100, GGHR 2141, GGHR 2416 and HASA 2179 as a single strategic growth location, and the reason for that is that the landowners and promoters have signed a joint memorandum of understanding and they're working together to look at this comprehensively. So as set out in the report, it has potential to deliver 2,750 homes, including affordable housing, a new bypass to the east, open space, a local centre, new primary schools, employment land, and including an extension to Bluebridge Industrial Estate. So on screen now are the maps that are within your agenda pack. So this is showing a sort of a more vague boundary to the growth location, just because it will be defined as the situation progresses. So it's a sort of general area with the darker red line being the bypass relief road, and that's it as a whole. On screen now, this is what the developers have provided in terms of an indicative framework plan, which shows those sort of peach areas are areas for housing. The potential for land for schools is in orange. Apologies if anybody's colourblind. Local centres are marked with a purple star. The employment land is pink. The relief road is obviously running through to the east and around north and south, and then the country park acts as a buffer. So this sort of shows you how this could be delivered, and that there is sort of a comprehensive master plan approach being taken here. In terms of the highways work that's currently being undertaken to support the local plan review process, so what we have at the moment is an initial sustainability accessibility appraisal of spatial options. So they are giving a score of existing and potential score for various sort of locations for growth within the district. And the general principle is that you guide your development towards the more accessible locations. So in this case, in terms of the score for Halstead, it's relatively high up the list in terms of one of the more sustainable locations. So that means that we will move on to further modelling work, which will look at the impact on the road network in the first instance in terms of congestion points and journey times that would result from the growth, and then it will look at what mitigation might be provided to address pinch points and congestion. So this is stage one, and the initial scoring for Halstead as a growth location shows it to be one of the more sustainable and accessible, and therefore warranting further modelling work to support the regulating consultation. In terms of the landscape character, so I've got some photos of the site. On the left, you've got the map which shows the arrow as to where you're looking. So the top image is looking from Halstead towards the east, out to give you an idea of what the landscape looks like. In essence, the landscape character assessment shows the areas to the northeast as having higher sensitivity, and the remainder being less sensitive. So this gives you an idea of views towards Halstead and obviously views away from Halstead, just in terms of general context. And in the north part, you can see it's more open, and that's probably why it's scoring as more sensitive. Right. Apologies, that's the last one. Okay. So within the report, we've summarised the constraints. On the whole, the site's relatively unconstrained, offers the potential to provide a new growth location, which can potentially provide the new relief road. I say potentially because that transport work is there to look at what is the impact and then model what solutions, mitigation is there. And given this, it's recommended that these sites are allocated for development. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Members, just before I open this up for debate, I think I'm going to need to move standing orders because we are likely to go on past, well, in fact, we will, past 9:30, which means we will go beyond 3 hours. So in order to deal with the remainder of business, I need to move standing orders. Is that agreed, everyone? Yep, right. Thank you very much. Right, who would like? Councillor Monday.
Okay, thank you for the presentation. Treating the 4 sites that we're looking at now, plus GGHR 2142, which is on the next recommendation, and treating these as a whole, I'd like clarification that if the sites are classed as a single strategic growth location, that there's a guarantee made that none of these sites can be developed individually outside of that single site status, given the understanding that a joint working memorandum of understanding agreement will be in place with all developers in order to deliver that bypass. Additionally, in paragraph 3.34 on page 223, the wording is potential delivery of a bypass. With the size and scale of the strategic location site, it can't be allowed to progress without an absolute undertaking to deliver a bypass, not potentially deliver one. The approximate total number of homes within these recommendations, if I'm correct, including GGHR 2142, is 2,770, which will significantly increase the size of Halstead's population by at least 50%, and therefore must come with a guarantee that there will be facilities delivered to accommodate the strategic growth site as a whole and ease the burden on the existing oversubscribed facilities and infrastructure within Halstead. Whilst I appreciate, and this is something that Councillor Cunningham alluded to earlier, whilst I appreciate that the government are applying this pressure for house building nationally, local developments under a certain threshold are not mandated to deliver schools, surgeries and other facilities, and whilst it might result in considerable S106 developer contributions, this rarely helps the burden placed on existing facilities and its inhabitants if the infrastructure is not put in place. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Sarah, do you want to just come back on that first?
Thank you. So I'll probably take the points backwards because as I remember them. So you can see on the master plan they're actually offering land for schools. So we are at an early stage of the local plan process. The Reg 18 consultation and work with statutory consultees like Essex County Council will bottom out what they need in terms of provision, and we will get that guidance. We will write that into the policy then to say what we want as our shopping list of things. Like I say, with the bypass, the developers are well aware that that's our expectation. What I don't have at the moment is the evidence to say we absolutely need it. So it's just phasing the highways evidence to get to the point where we do absolutely need it. So I
can come back on that. Yeah. We absolutely need a bypass. If you put 2,770 homes in Halstead, even on this part of Halstead, we have Head Street as a bottleneck already. You know, coming from Sudbury back to Halstead, it only takes one lorry, for instance, to turn around at the top of the high street, and there's gridlock. So you cannot underestimate the need for that bypass to go into this absolute development.
I don't disagree. I just need the evidence to tell an examiner exactly that story. So it's that it will develop to that point. It's just we don't have all of that yet. But what you will get is a policy that sets out our criteria, essentially.
I think if I get this right, what we can't absolutely do tonight is to alter that wording to say must have a bypass. It's just, yeah. Right, okay. Councillor Finken, I think
yes,
you're next.
Obviously I support everything that Councillor Mundy has said. I think the point that the representative from Green made about the increase in the size of the town, that Councillor Mundy also repeated, of 50%, means that the character of the town will change profoundly as a result. It will be unrecognisable from what it is now. And as Councillor Nunn said, you know, the very rural nature of the town, I think, will be completely changed and will become much more urban. The quid pro quo is the provision of the bypass. Now, this is something that the Town Council and people in Halstead have wanted for the last 50 years. And we've got some way towards it sometimes, and then we've fallen back and nothing's gone through and so on. And there has always been some opposition to it within the town, as was evidenced by Councillor Nunn's presentation. But generally, people in Halstead do want a bypass, and the Town Council as a whole has always supported a bypass. And I think it's really important that it does become part of our plan. I was a little bit worried about the use of the word relief road. I think it has to be a proper bypass. Now, we've seen what's happened with Braintree bypass and the bottlenecks that that's created and the unsatisfactory nature of parts of it. And we don't want that to happen to Halstead. It has to be, as the councillor from Greaves to Green said, it has to be properly planned, supported by its County Council Highways and its successor authority, whatever that happens to be, and you know, we need to be involved in those decisions really, and influencing the way in which it's designed, and I think that would produce something worthwhile. But I'd like some response afterwards. I'll go through the other points first, but about the relief road thing. The route looks a bit strange. On one of the maps, and that map in fact, everything looks hunky-dory. But on several of the other maps, it looks as if the bypass is going straight through the middle of the estates. And I don't know what's wrong with those maps, and that this is the correct interpretation, but I think that ought to be clarified, really. We don't want the bypass to be going through the middle of the estate. I don't think it's going to be just sufficient to have a bypass too, because the people who are in these new developments are going to want to travel into Halstead, which has very narrow roads. There's already a lot of... There's already a lot of... Well, I think my voice is loud enough anyway. But there's already a lot of congestion in the town. You know, Halstead wasn't built for motor cars. It was built for horses and carts. And it's a lot of the roads in the centre of the town are still like that. And it's very difficult to get through to get through the town. There isn't enough parking, and the car parking already is overburdened, and that will only get worse with more people travelling from these residential developments into the town centre. So the through traffic, yes, that might be benefiting from the bypass, but there will still be a lot of extra traffic in the town itself. Yes, I did want to kind of remind officers about the cycleway from Housley to Wells Cone, the need to protect that, and other highways, other footpaths and bridleways and public rights of way within the town as part of any proposals that we put forward. And of course, I agree with everything that's been said previously about the pressure that will be put on local services by such a drastic increase in the number of people living in the town. It isn't just having a couple of extra primary schools, if we find that that's necessary. It's preschool provision for the under fives, already under tremendous pressure, and this will only bring greater pressure. It's the, as somebody said, it's the surgery, Elizabeth Courtauld surgery, it's the hospital, and a number of other facilities that are going to be overburdened even more than they are already by having all this extra population. So we've got mixed feelings about it. In general, I think we feel if we do get the bypass out of it, yes, we will support the proposals and we will come to terms with the increase in population and the change in the character of the town. But obviously a lot of the detail needs to be worked out very carefully to make sure that we don't have a worse town than we have already.
Thank you, Councillor Cunningham, I think I had you next.
Thank you very much indeed. A pleasure to follow on from both the two local Household members here and their overall approach to this situation on behalf of the Household community. I think and without wishing to prejudge how local plan subcommittee will vote tonight, if local plan subcommittee are minded to support this, I think we need to go a stage further in terms of being very, very clear with the level of master planning that is required. This isn't, and this I think this is on par in terms of this authority's involvement with planning policy, probably on par with something like Great Notley 35, 40 years ago, in terms of the relationship we had there with the primary developers in helping the master plan. But of course, it's not just BDC. It's important that we lever in the total support and commitment to this from Essex County Council. Now, from a highways point of view, I have seen, as a highways cabinet member, I've seen the highways projections for the Colchester master plan, for the Colchester local plan. They are a stage ahead of us in terms of having allocated sites. We're not still fully aware of the full picture yet. But obviously this is a significant development in the north of the district that would have profound implications on the North Essex road network. So I think it's very important that they're at the table, highways at the table at the earliest possible opportunity, as well as the other partners. So I think if we are minded to support this, taking on board everything that's been said by the local members, we need to give not only the commitment to multi-agency master planning, that is there, ready to go, and will be inherited by a legacy authority, but also we actually really do explore other examples of how local authorities have worked together with communities and multi-agencies to master plan. I think we need to set a higher level of expectation if we are to want to unlock these housing sites. And it's not a relief road, it is absolutely a bypass. It is a bypass, and it's an opportunity to unlock the unfortunate deficit Halstead has had to put up with in terms of the additional development and actually be a few steps ahead, future-proof Halstead for this. So I think that is the strength of commitment we need to give tonight.
Thanks, Councillor. Councillor Ritchie, I have you next.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And excuse me because my voice is really starting to falter. Just to add some points around the bypass. So I remember doing a project when I was 10 years old when I lived in Halstead on the bypass, and I thought it was about 40 years old, but Councillor Finken's trumped me by saying it's actually been planned for 50 years. And I'm 50 in 2 weeks' time. So that just goes to show how long this has been in the making for. Just to push the point around, if there's a consortium looking at delivering that amount of housing onto Halstead, they can't just use the adage of, we will supply a relief road for our project. They have to look at Housestead in its entirety. Because as Councillor Cunningham quite rightly said, Housestead has suffered over the years with the additional housing, with that single road going through Housestead, with the turn off at Headingham Road and then the right turn to towards Colchester. And the amount of traffic that navigates through that point because of the additional housing that has happened in Housestead, I really do feel for the residents there, because they are battling every day against the additional traffic plus the traffic given by the additional housing. It almost makes them impossible during the peak times to get from point to point. So, in fact, the bypass needs to be in place at the time that the construction is going on. It can't be we'll build the houses first and then we'll build the bypass after. It's almost as if the infrastructure has to come first. Again, in cohorts with Essex County Council, local members, whoever it is under local government reform, have to be all on the same page on delivering how this would work for Housestead to deliver the size and scale with a consortium of house builders to deliver that type of housing in Housestead.
Thank you, Councillor Ritchie. I have Councillor Parker next and then Councillor Hooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just a clarification, because we're talking about 2,750 dwellings as part of this, but the numbers that are on page 215 and 216 of the report talk about 1,100 for GGHR 2141, which is the southern section, and then for the north and eastern one, 1,200. So how do we get to 2,750? And I've got some other points I want to make.
Yeah, there is some detail to be ironed out within the submission. So all those numbers have been taken out of the information provided. So yeah, there are some different numbers between the northern and the southern sites. I think it's because it's at such an early stage that we're looking at high level information that will get refined as the more detailed work is carried out.
Okay, so at the moment we don't know what number we're talking about, because those two numbers, obviously that's 2,300 rather
2,750 is the more recent number.
Okay, thank you. I noticed that, I obviously accept that there has been a long-standing desire to have a bypass around Housestead, and that trying to drive through the middle of Housestead for lorries and everybody else is just virtually incredibly difficult and very poses a huge amount of problems for Housestead, and therefore a bypass is desperately needed. I did have a good look, a walk around actually some of the footpaths, because I sometimes feel that actually going out there and looking yourself and you can't really tell from photographs. So I do have some concerns about whether that volume of housing is going to be able to be delivered on that site. Those parcels at the north there are completely sort of disjointed from the rest of Housestead. The bypass is crossing two protected lanes, one of them which is a sunken lane, and there will be trees that would have to be cut. I mean, the lane will no longer be protected, but there's one which is more sort of has a lot more character than the other. Both of them are completely single-track lanes. You cannot get another car, two cars past. The other concern I have is obviously that northern section, as you've pointed out, is a high-sensitive, medium-high-sensitive landscape. So there may be concerns about how much volume of housing you can deliver there and within that landscape. And the other issue is that the sort of river valley. So the northern part of the site, the sort of left-hand side that goes alongside, it is actually, I mean, you probably know, there's a substantial slope on there, and this was difficult to build on slopes. The land also, bizarrely, sort of undulates along the slope, which makes it even more difficult. In fact, it's interesting because that bottom section there has not even being farmed, it's just left as grassland, because obviously impossible, too difficult to make it worthwhile trying to farm. So, and some of that sort of development that is on that master plan is in that really hilly area. So I'm not sure that they're going to be able to deliver the numbers I think they're going to be able to deliver. And then that then leads me to the question as well, is that going to impact on the delivery of the bypass? So that is a concern that I have, because obviously the whole point of this is to not only just provide housing, but equally important, in fact, if not more important, to deliver the housing. The bypass, sorry. The other concern I sort of do have, and I live up here, drive through there, my husband drives through there at peak hours, is the traffic. I mean, I hope it's going to be, the traffic on the road to Colchester is solid in the morning, absolutely solid. Most of it's going to Colchester. I suspect the traffic on the road going south to Braintree is the same. It'll bottlenecks up to Braintree, to the Marks Farm roundabout. It would be lovely if everybody worked in Halstead, but that's not going to happen. The trains are completely full. The station car parks are getting full. I mean, you can build more station car parks, but you can't provide more. I suppose you could, turn a 10-carriage train into a 14-carriage train at length of the platform. There's these sort of problems with delivering this amount of housing. But I know this is a common theme that is not just affecting, obviously residents of Braintree know well about traffic congestion, but it's just, it is a concern. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor. Sarah, do you want to come back on?
If I come back on the numbers, I mean, this is a really early stage, so we're not really even at Reg 18 yet, and so the developer's only prepared to do a certain amount of evidence. They are going to have to do a lot more work if you are choosing to recommend this site for growth, because they're going to have to demonstrate deliverability, as will we, to a planning inspector. So I would just reassure you that it's because we're at such an early stage that I can't answer. I suspect you're probably right about the capacity in the northern part of the site, but I can't answer that for certain at this stage. What I will say is that by allocating it in the local plan and putting a policy together, we are going to require comprehensive development, and the local plan will look at modelling when that relief road bypass needs to come forward, to ensure that the road network is capable of taking it, and it will look at the wider road network as well. If there are other parts of the road network which need mitigation, it will look at that. So all of that will the local plan process will carry on. It's just that what I have at the moment is quite a high level concept plan to establish the principle.
Thank you. Yeah, I think it's fair to say that when hopefully our draft plan is submitted to the inspectorate next year, whichever inspector is appointed will expect to see and will have to see a great deal more detail. So, yeah. Councillor Hooks.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I also grew up in Halstead with this fairy tale of what might be a Halstead bypass, and similar age to Councillor Ritchie. So, yeah.
Did you do a project at school?
I think I may have done a traffic count thing once or twice, done by Trinity Church, watching, anyway, digress. I actually welcome the comments by Councillor Mundy and Councillor Finkin, and actually everyone else that's already spoken. Halstead desperately needs a bypass. It's great to see this indicative plan. This obviously wasn't in our pack for tonight, so it's a nice surprise, but could this have perhaps been in the pack that was sent out to us, along with the other table, the community sustainability or something, going forward for the other sites coming forward, if we have that to hand. Where obviously we've got an indicative line where the bypass could run. I think similar concerns to Councillor Finkin is how do they link up to get into the town from there, because that was probably going to be a lovely, nice, wide road, and then you're going to be faced with a road like King's Road that's one way, cars parked everywhere. That is a problem, and it's going to be hard to overcome. Lots been said about there's definitely 2 schools, but obviously the doctor's surgery and the hospital is a major concern. So I think we need some level of thought process of definitely what is happening there. And also just on the indicative picture that we had on page 260 of our agenda, the big red line, the swathe that is actually meant to be what could be a bypass. Obviously, we are only going up as far as the Sudbury Road, because this red line does indicate it could go round to Headingham Road, which obviously would then give another whole aspect of travel. So I'm assuming that there is nothing in the pipeline. We are just looking at a road, or looking at a bypass that connects the A131 to the A131 north to south.
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Abbott.
Thank you. Yeah, talking about history, I can vaguely remember going on a coach trip. I don't know if any other members can remember around here, probably not. To look at the potential route of the Housestead bypass. I can't even remember whether it was by the time I'd become a councillor before, but it was around about that time. So we're talking maybe 3 decades ago. Might have been around the time some of the members here were doing their school projects, actually.
I wasn't coaching horses.
Which shows how old I am. But I remember thinking, wouldn't it be terrible to put a bypass through here, all this lovely countryside? But I bow to the local members. I believe in democracy, and I think if that's what Haverhill wants, that's what people need. My concern really is shared with a lot of comments that have already been made, is this is a very unusual proposal. If you think about all the proposals we've done before for either medium-sized developments or large, I mean, effectively wrapping around 3 sides of a town and expanding out sort of like most of a donut. And then you've got this issue of, well, will the developers provide the bypass or bits of it? We know what developers are like as well. You know, they go bankrupt. They say, well, we can't do that. We want to do this first. And, oh, yeah, we said we'd do that, but we're going to do it in 5 years. So timing would be very important. Is this going to be built early in this development? Because I think that's what presumably Haverhill would want. They wouldn't want this at the end of the development, because this will take many, many years to build. Yeah. So the only thing I would conclude with is that what the officers have been talking about in terms of master planning, it's got to be absolutely cast iron. It's got to be, this bypass is going to be built, and it's going to be built at this phase of the development, delivered, so that it's doing what the town wants. Because otherwise, I think it could get very messy.
Thank you, Councillor Abbott. Councillor Bowers.
Yes, thank you, Madam Chairman. I think just following on from that point, I think that's one of the sort of things I wanted to say is kind of, because in the report parts that we've got about like the initial residential completions could occur in 2030, 2031, but what does that look like in regards to the bypass and that kind of thing? I think, so just to get this right, because I get what you're saying, Sarah, earlier in regards, obviously everything needs to be evidence-based and following on from the comments that were made from the local sort of ward members, which I completely agree with. But I do agree, obviously, we need the evidence. But when it needs to be presented, like next year, to the inspector, and then it has to be evidenced in regards to deliverability of the site. I'm presuming that will mean with the bypass. I'm just trying to get in my head, when will we have that information, that evidence, which we kind of all in this room, or the majority in this room, feel that that's right. The evidence is going to be there because we kind of know, but it always has to be provided. But when will that sort of evidence be provided? Will that be provided ahead of us making the final decision on the local plan after consultation, or I know we've got the draft meeting in December. Will that strengthen up any of the recommendations? When will that evidence be provided? So when will the evidence or the deliverability from the developers of this have everything like by next year? Because I think the concerns are that what we don't want to be doing is agreeing something and then you get more housing and this doesn't come, and it has to be everything or nothing really. So just getting a bit more information about when that actual initial evidence will be provided to actually back up what we all, I think we know, that we do need a bypass.
Thank you.
So we'll have in order to go to Reg 18, you've got to have your evidence in draft. So there will be that, but the developer will be working up more and more information. So by the time that we get to the point of consulting on a or asking you to approve a Regulation 19 plan, you would have more of that information, because that's your pre-submission document that you're going to consult on and then submit on. So that's the point where we need to we will have the evidence, and as I said, the inspector's going to be asking for that you know, to make sure that, as Councillor Abbott said, they know when what phase of the development would deliver what bit of the road, will all be mapped out and modelled within the transport evidence. So yes, essentially we'll have all our evidence in draft to support the draft plan for Reg 18, and then there will be more evidence pre-submission so that you're making a decision with viability, deliverability from them pre-submission.
Yeah, Councillor Bowers, yeah.
Just come out. So there's not going to. So what we're going to be putting forward will be that there has to be a bypass, and it has to be delivered before any housing. That will it be as strong as that, so it doesn't happen through the back door and we end up with something we don't want, kind of thing.
I can't say that for certain at the moment because I don't know what the Highways evidence is going to say about when the road needs to be delivered, but we will look at that and we will have that information, and we are working with Essex County Council both in terms of they as the Highway Authority will have control over the design of the road, and also we'll be working with they are providing our evidence based on the traffic modelling, so you know we are working really closely with Essex.
Anyone else? Right, so members, we have the recommendation that sites 2100 land east of Blue Bridge, 2141 land south east of Halstead, 2416 land east of Colchester Road, and 2179 land north and east of Halstead are allocated as a strategic growth location. And I think it's fair to say with a very strong message about master planning and delivery time. Would anybody like to move that? Ooh, that's a close thing. I think Councillor Martin, you actually got in first. Councillor Finken, do you want to second? Would you like second? Right, can I have a show of hands on that, please? And that's unanimous. Thank you very much, members. Right, recommendation 4, 2142, land west and north of Star Style Cottages, Halstead. Sarah.
Apologies, I don't think we've put or if it's out of sync. No, I don't think we've put one that shows the site itself because it will be part of the strategic growth location. Yeah. So if I just summarise why we haven't included this in the previous recommendation, the reason for that is that this landowner is not working with the consortium. But as a result of the decision you've just taken in respect of the strategic growth location, this site is essentially going to be sandwiched between the existing extent of Halstead and the strategic growth location. So that it's got no significant constraints, and that's really the basis for recommending that this is added, and we will then ask them to engage with the other landowners to try and get a single comprehensive. But at this point, they haven't engaged, but we haven't really sort of required it either because of the scale of it. But we will taking that forward.
Right, Councillor Finken.
Yeah, I think this is slightly different from the other sites because it is a site of superior landscape value, and the setting of the cricket pitch, for example, it's right next to it. It's quite idyllic in some ways, really, and picturesque part of the surrounding of Halstead. And I think that all those things ought to be taken into account, really, rather than just lumping it in with all the other sites and saying, well, if we're going to do one, we've got to do them all. I think this is a particularly sensitive site which we ought to be really careful about how or if it's developed. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Any comments? No? Right. Yeah, it is very close to the cricket ground, isn't it?
Yes,
yeah. Okay. Right, so members, the recommendation 2142, land west and north of Star Style Cottages, Star Style Road, is included within a strategic growth location. Would anybody like to move that? Councillor Martin again. Councillor Monday, you seconding? And could I have a show of hands on that one, please? That's okay, thank you. Anyone against? Abstentions? Thank you. Couple of places, right, but that is carried, right. thank you, members. So recommendation 5, land at Aylward's Farm, Gosfield. Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So this is adjacent to Gosfield, which is a third-tier village. So it's not sustainable and it's not in accordance with the spatial strategy. There are a number of significant constraints, including ecology, flood risk, heritage and landscape harm, and for this reason we are not recommending allocation of this site.
Any comments from anyone? No. Councillor Cunningham just got first.
Just a point of recollection, Alan might be able to help me with this one. Was this part of, did this feature in the last local plan call for sites, and was this part of Gittins' proposals for?
I don't think it. I thought it did. Yeah. Probably, I can't.
Alternative to the garden communities.
I think it might have been put forward as a golden community alternative,
Yes. Yeah.
but it wasn't submitted formally through the previous call for sites process. I think it has been submitted by a different agent this time around. They have indicated to me that this, the whole site is available. They would consider smaller parcels as well. So, if members wanted something a little bit smaller, they would be more than happy to accommodate that. But yeah, it's I believe it's a different land agent.
Councillor Abbott. Sorry, do you?
I think this site and a few others demonstrate the principle that landowners will try any put any bits of land in. I mean, it's so grossly unsuitable. I think we should reject it unanimously.
Okay.
So I'll move that.
Right. Okay. So that has been moved. Does it find a second? Councillor Ritchie. Does anybody else want to speak on it? If not, we'll take a vote, please. Yes. Thank you, members. That's unanimous. Now, Councillor Garrett, I've been waiting very patiently again because our last item is the land south of Haverhill, Sturmer site.
Thank you, Chair.
That's fine.
So I'm here on behalf of residents as the ward representative for the Bumpstead ward. Officers recommend that site STIR 2293 land south of Haverhill is not allocated for large-scale development. And having spoken with numerous residents, local parish councils and Haverhill town councillors, this is the right decision for this site for a multitude of reasons. I'll focus on one of these reasons. This huge parcel of Grade 2 agricultural land partly sits in a prominent and highly elevated position on sloping ground and continues into rolling countryside within the project area of the Dedham Vale Area of Outstanding Natural Beauty, now National Landscape, within the Stour Valley. As Braintree Council's representative for this committee for almost 10 years, I know there remains a strong consensus for this project area to be designated and included into the Dedham Vale National Landscape, currently the 4th smallest in the country. From certain viewpoints, the natural beauty of its countryside views can be quite breathtaking. Picturesque villages, rolling farmland, rivers, meadows, ancient woodlands, and a wide variety of local wildlife, flora and fauna, combined to create what many would describe as the traditional English landscape. In recognition of this, the Dedham Vale AONB commissioned a landscape study of this area, provided by Allison Farmer Associates of Cambridge, one of the UK's leading professionals in landscape character assessment, impact assessment and landscape evaluation. On the 15th of September at full council, the majority of councillors indicated they wish to join with Colchester for the new unitary authority. Dedham is an absolute jewel for residents to enjoy and a tourist attraction which provides Colchester Council with a very healthy income. I have no doubt that the project area, which continues through the Stour Valley to Steeple Bumpstead, has similar potential, but this currently remains unexplored. There are many thriving tourist attractions nearby in the north of this district. The magnificent Heading Castle, Colne Valley Railway, a new bus museum in the making, and the glorious Stour Valley Path, a 60-mile walk. I've always fought for sensitive and limited housing development in the Bumpstead ward because I believe that this area is underestimated and overlooked for alternative potential. Planning is not just about dwellings, it's also about shaping amenities in balance with nature so that children can enjoy the outside world and be educated in its wonders, and adults can find a place of peace and tranquility. Being less than 30 minutes drive from south of Cambridge with its fabulous museums and awe-inspiring architecture, and 30 minutes west of Bury St Edmunds, voted the best place to live in the east of England by the Sunday Times in 2024. 30 minutes east of Saffron Walden, voted the best this year, and not forgetting just 30 minutes north of famous Braintree with its marvellous shopping village, museum and warmer textiles archive. The Bumpstead Ward sits slap bang in the centre of these glorious places. Investment around the Stour Valley has potential, the River Stour has potential, and I believe it would be remiss of this council to approve large-scale housing development. Once this outstanding English landscape is gone, it's gone forever. The Bumpstead Ward and Stour Valley has so much more to offer and should be valued and viewed for its natural beauty through a fresh lens. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garrett. Right, Sarah.
Thank you, Chair. So, yes, this is on the edge of our district, immediately to the south of Haverhill in West Suffolk. Haverhill, in their local plan, is designated as a town, and in terms of their spatial strategy, takes a positive approach to growth within towns as the most sustainable locations with easy access to facilities through walking, cycling and wheeling. So the submission includes a draft framework plan on screen, which proposes development to the south of Haverhill, both within Braintree District and within West Suffolk District. So there's land for schools in purple and pink, land for a transport hub in blue, land for development in yellow with local centres shown by hatching and open spaces in green. So the site would provide around 3,000 homes within Braintree District and around 3,700 homes in West Suffolk. We actually had a meeting with West Suffolk officers this morning. So their local plan was adopted in July this year. Because they are under the old NPPF number, they've committed to an immediate review of their local plan. But essentially their timetable is out of kilter with ours. They advised us they've put growth to the north of Haverhill, and they had an objection from Homes England in terms of further development in to the south of Haverhill because of the traffic impact on getting to Cambridge. And essentially, I think the north has been served by a new relief road, but there has to be a more significant transport solution for growth on this side of Haverhill. So they wouldn't support development coming forward in pieces, both on their side or on our side, because they need that sort of joined up comprehensive approach to deliver the infrastructure that's needed to support the growth. For that reason, we're not proposing to that together with landscape heritage impact. We're not proposing this as a allocation for growth at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Sarah. Right. Councillor Parker.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I know this road extremely well. Drive on it very often. Thank you for what you said, Sarah, about the comments you've had back about transport, which I would wholeheartedly agree with. And yes, the West Suffolk have chosen to and are building out quite, I think, 2,500 homes to the north of Haverhill. The problem I have with the site, in addition to those problems you've mentioned, is it is actually on a quite substantial slope, and one of the problems with, in fact, one of the problems with some of the development that has gone on the industrial site is that you can really see it from the other side of the valley. So it's encroaching up the valley sides. This would make it even worse. What you probably can't see terribly well from this map is what's the other side of that, the bypass, not really Fred, bypass, especially on the right-hand side, is a substantial employment centre. Yeah. So it's really not particularly nice to be living in an area which is right next to the employment centre. Whereas all the facilities in the town are the other side of it. So I think it's a poor location. I think there are definitely be some archaeological impacts as well because there's some kind of site there. So I think all in all, I think it's a poor choice, and I agree with the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Anyone like to add to that? No. Oh, yes, Councillor Cunningham.
My apologies, lateness of night. West Suffolk are not proposing anything on this corridor, is she?
Not at this time. So that they've committed, because they've got a plan just adopted. They're going to be in the new plan making system. So they're not. We don't know entirely what that's going to look like yet. But they're designing their LDS around a visioning. So we're essentially not in kilter with them timing wise. No. If there was a delay to our local plan, then it might be something that they would bring forward. But they're not at the stage of proposing any growth anywhere at the moment, because they're sort of working out their new local plan timetable and format.
Thank you, Sarah.
Right, so recommendation 6 is that site 2293, land south of Haverhill, is not allocated for development. Can I have somebody to move? Councillor Coleridge, I think you got it in first, and Councillor Parker seconded. Could I have a show of hands on that, please? Thank you, members. That's unanimous. Good. So, agenda item 8, Braintree District Local Plan Review, General Progress Update. Sarah, are we?
I don't think we have. I don't think we need to do a verbal update this evening. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, good.
Is that the answer you were looking for?
That's very disappointing. No, that's fine. Right, in that case, members, there's no urgent business in public session, so I am going to close the meeting at about 3 minutes past 10. Very well done, everybody. Thank you to officers. Thank you to members. I think that was really good debates, good decisions. And I will see you all here again next Wednesday. Thank you.